Boom. Hello. Hey everyone, and welcome to Lorebeards. I am here alone for about an hour, unfortunately. My buddy Ross is going to be running a tiny bit late to the Council of Nikaea. He said something about getting evidence to help support Magnus and maybe changing everything so that Magnus could actually have a fair trial. But so I had some legionaries of a certain legion distract him so that we can get the proper results that we need from the Council of Nikaea. So, hi everyone, welcome to Lorebeards. My name is Norn Queen Alexis. I am a massive nerd, and these are the shields I made. I'm sorry, I'm really proud of them. I am a Viking reenactress, reenactor? Yeah. And a massive Warhammer 40k nerd. I am so busy these days. We have just a few more days before the Viking Festival here in Iceland. It's going to be at Hafnarfjörður, and Hafnarfjörður. Yeah, I can say it properly. I promise. but that's a sick. Yeah, 3 of info saves guaranteed. You will roll 90% ones and twos when using them. So today's topic is going to be no, Ross, they killed him. Oh no, they didn't kill him. Ross just didn't make it to the shield wall, that's all. So today's topic is the Council of Nikaea. And a lot of you may be thinking, what is the Council of Nikaea? Well, it's when Magnus was put on trial for using too much sorcery, and all the legions kind of got worried about him. And we're like, hey, this is borderline, witchcraft, and you're using magics and sorcery, and this is exactly what Old Night happened, and this is super dangerous, and Magnus, you're going a bit too far. And a lot of the Primarchs were like, yeah, that's super dangerous. Don't be doing this. And Magnus is like, I know better than you. A Chaos God told me. I mean, what? I just sacrificed my eye to a warp entity. No big deal. And the Emperor of Mankind was like, hey, that's kind of a big deal. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. You know what? I heard all of you guys. I'm gonna stop all of this psychic nonsense. Stop it. Only I could be the best psyker of them all. And yes, the Imperium is filled with hypocrisy. In fact, the Council of Nikaea is very hypocritical, and I absolutely love it because of how hypocritical it really is. So overall, the decision of Nikaea was to permanently disband psychers, and the the legions formally disbanded psychers, and they absolutely hated it. And then they immediately broke that during the heresy and brought them all back anyway. In fact, almost every legion brought them back. I think Rogel Dorn was like one of the last ones to bring them back, but yeah. Wait, Ross isn't here. Is he getting cookies for us? You know what, Biofoot? Without context, I hope your next super chat, a super chat when he is here, is that where's my cookies? Just Ross, where's my cookies? Oh, this feels weird doing this without my headset, so I'm gonna throw my headset on. Mostly to keep my hair out of my face. So, the prelude, because there's a lot of buildup to what is the Council of Nikaea and what led up to the Council of Nikaea. I got you, Alexis. Thank you, Biofoot. You're the best. So, oh my God, where do I start with this? Okay. So we have to start with the Great Crusade. But what is the Great Crusade? Well, the Great Crusade is the Emperor plunging himself out into the galaxy along with all the Imperial armies and his Legiones Astartes. The Legiones Astartes being his superhuman warriors, and the Imperial army being the Imperial army, as well as the Sol Auxilia. They all went out into the galaxy during the Great Crusade to, 1, find the missing Primarchs, and 2, reunite all the lost civilizations of humanity and bring them under one hyper-fascist rule. That's pretty much it. During these expeditions into the unknown, a lot of legions started encountering different types of uses of magics, sorcery, and warpcraft. and the legions didn't have a proper way of combating it yet. The legions themselves didn't usually implement psychers too often until the Thousand Sons were the ones to initiate the Librarius protocol or library. The what is it actually called? I wrote this down. I wrote this down. And I lost my notes. Where are my notes? I am so prepared. As you can see, I am completely prepared. Regardless, the Librarius was created as a way of fighting against sorcery and witchcraft, as well as strange warp xenos that definitely were not demons in any way, shape, or form. They were not. Nope. Because the Emperor told everybody that chaos gods don't exist. Well, he said that no gods exist. Nothing from the warp can really affect you guys. He was pretty much very much in favor of plausible deniability. Like, if you don't believe it hard enough, hopefully it's fine. You guys won't encounter it too much. But the Great Crusade kept encountering human civilizations as well as alien civilizations, making heavy use of psychic powers. And they they implemented the Librarius to combat them and to teach the Space Marines about warpcraft and how useful and beneficial to the legions it could be. But a lot of the Primarchs, some of them outright refused to use it for the most part, though every single legion did have a Librarius, because they pushed most of them into, like, if you were a psychic space marine, you would be pushed into the libraries. Whether or not your Primarch would make use of you is a completely different story. Like, Rogel Dorn was infamous for not letting his psychers out, where Primarchs like Magnus encouraged the exploration and free use of psychic powers, so much so that warp creatures were walking amongst their planet. Um, so that's kind of going a little bit overboard. They were also starting to run into psychic backlashes. But this wasn't too big at the time just yet. It wasn't until a massive psychic backlash where a Primarch, Lehman Russ, witnessed it and he was like, I don't like that sort of thing. And I'm going to remember that. Lehman Russ will remember this. But as they fought these races and everything, and as they destroyed all these foul Xenos that were using strange powers of the warp and strange sorceries and things like that, it kept reminding them of Old Night. And you might be asking yourself, well, what is Old Night? Old Night is when psychers were crazy powerful and destroying like entire planets. And the psychers were out of control and insanely powerful. Because human psychers are not as strong as like Eldari psychers, though the psychic powers in 40k fluctuate quite a bit. Like, there are super powerful human psychers, there are god tier psychic humans, and then there's the Eldari who were throwing around entire warp storms that can engulf entire systems, like a psychic storm that engulfs multiple planets. But they weren't on that. Well, Magnus is on that level, but anywho, we're not there yet. But Old Night happened, and the Imperium eventually did destroy, well, the Emperor destroyed most of those psychers and used a bunch of them and made the navigators and made useful psychers. And useful psychers, yeah, are like Malkador. Yeah, Necroplayer, you are completely correct. Malkador is a psyker that is completely permitted to be a psyker and do whatever the hell he wants. So a lot of the Primarchs didn't like the use of Psychers. Good chunk of them did use Psychers. Blood Angels famously used a lot of Psychers. White Scars used a lot of Psychers, though it's never really shown, which is a shame. The Thousand Sons used hundreds of Psychers, thousands of Psychers. They were crazy. They had Psychers in every single squad. I think, let's see, Typhus was a psyker, but I don't know how many psychers existed within the Death Guard. I just know that they had a few. And a lot of people had different variations of psychers. The Space Wolves, for instance, had things called Storm Seers. No, wait, that's White Scars. White Scars had Storm Seers, and then Space Wolves used the Rune Spirit. Helen, something's missing. Yeah. Ross is hiding behind the shields. He'll emerge later. um, but a lot of Legion. What other legions made heavy use of psychers? Alpha Legion made heavy use of psychers, and Angron outright forbid them. He uses none of them, especially after he gave the Butcher's Nails to everybody, which the Butcher's Nails suppress psychic powers in everybody. Um, I'm going through the legions in my head and who made use of psychers and who really didn't. The Ultramarines made use of them, but didn't like them too much. They were not trusted. And that's a big thing is librarians are not trusted because the Imperium word bearers used a shit ton of psychers. Sorry, I completely forgot that word bearers exist, and they're instrumental to the entirety of the Horus Heresy series. They are probably the most important players, the MVPs of the Horus Heresy. They won it. Like they did exactly what they set out to do. Um, in fact, the word bearers did something even more evil. They created a whole different line of psychers because they went down the evil tree for psychic powers, where Magnus tried to do the gray line, but he eventually just started summoning demons and everything, which is not something you want to be doing. It turns out that that's bad. Just saying, summoning demons is bad. You end up with me in your living room, and then I'm just like, hey, what's up? Do you have White Monster? Do you want to play Warhammer? So as they started battling these psychic races, these foul sorcerers, and all of these other like wandering psychers that were super powerful that were enslaving entire populations, they annihilated them to the point where a lot of chapters and a lot of legions had a severe distrust of librarians, and they are not trusted by their battle brothers. They are not looked upon as by their battle brothers. Typically, librarians don't lead. They are something that is kind of weirdly seen where, yes, they do make up a leadership role. They are part of the Councilaris, and they are technically a leader, but a lot of the times, like high-ranking sergeants will give orders over a librarian. So they were extremely distrusted. Lehman Russ distrusted them so much that he kept Sisters of Silence with him a lot. We have a good comment here. The council was right to curb Magnus's excesses. Absolutely. I there was yeah, but not when it dissolved the librarius. You're right. The chaplain should have overseen the limits of librarians' powers, not full dismantling. I like where your head is thinking. I absolutely love that, and I love the idea that chaplains are actually doing something instead of being goddamn cheerleaders, because that's all a chaplain is. It's just a glorified cheerleader. So Magnus started going a little bit crazy with his use of psychic powers, and his legion was summoning demons left, right, and center. They were using powers that were uh, unconventional and very, very uncontrolled. Actually, this is a good question. Were chaplains a thing yet? Ooh, okay. I could be getting the timeline wrong, and Ross will correct me, and we'll ask him when he arrives. But I believe chaplains did exist around the same time that the Librarius was founded, but I could be wrong about this because the word bearers are the ones that introduced the chaplains, and the Thousand Sons are the ones that introduced the Librarius. I don't know if any other chapter like introduced anything. I think technically the chapter champion comes from uh the Imperial Fist, but I could be wrong about that, so I apologies. Also, chaplains, word bearers seem like a sneaky thing. Yes, yes, they are. Godzilla Rex says, "You know who are really good at fighting demons? Demons. You know what? You're correct." But the demons that they were summoning were bound demons, which, okay, I need to explain demons in 40k really quickly. Okay, so, all right. Demons in Warhammer 40k are thought made manifest into beings that we fear. The fear that comes of comes from the fear of demons is the thing that actually makes demons, which is the thought of being scared of something. So demons can exist in multiple forms. In fact, they can exist in any and all forms, but typically they have four unique forms, technically five. We'll get to the fifth one. I will talk about the fifth one. The first form is a Nurgle demon, a demon of pestilence and disease. Then you have a Slanesh demon, a demon of excess and, well, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Uh, the cool demon. Then you have demons of the blood god Corn, demons of murder and blood and war, which is weird because there is a god of blood and war in the Eldar pantheon, and technically also Gorkamork are gods of war. 40k has a lot of gods of war. Kratos should come and clean them up. Then you have demons of Tzeentch. Demons of Tzeentch are demons that deceive, lie, are thousands upon thousands of plans, masters of psychic powers, and things of that nature. Oh yeah, technically, yeah, the Ultramarines did introduce the standard template for chapters, if that counts. Yeah, it does. It definitely does. They also are the ones that made the command squad. But technically, the command squad existed in the Horus Heresy, and then they made a command squad in earlier editions of Warhammer 40k, which then got rolled into the Heresy timeline. It was retroactively created by the Ultramarines, which is a weird thing to say because technically the Horus Heresy didn't exist until third edition, or it existed in second edition, but it was a paragraph. Okay, so demons, demons of the Runestorm, and bound demons are three different types of demons. And then there's oh yeah, I got to talk about the fifth type of demon, undivided demons. These are like demonic brutes, furies, some lesser demons. Technically, Vashtor is a demon that's undivided. Be'lakor is a demon that's undivided. Though technically he is chosen by all four chaos gods, and there's a whole argument of chosen versus undivided or undecided. Yeah. Bound demons are demons that are enslaved to the willpower of the summoner themselves. This is what the Thousand Sons did quite a bit. They would summon warp entities, demons, by a different name, and bound them to their will. And this allowed the wielder of the psychic powers or the sorcery to use their spells better because they acted like a spell familiar from Warhammer Fantasy, which is kind of pretty neat and cool. There were stronger bound demons, but that's where the word bearers. Thank you, brain, because I keep wanting to call them the word eaters. Damn dyslexia. The word bearers were the ones that mastered uh, binding stronger demons, like summoning Samus, bringing in not Shalaxi, Zarakanil, Scabatrax, big demons like that, big name demons. I should just say the bigger demons. Where Thousand Sons could summon those big demons, but they didn't have the know-how on how to properly bind them. Bound demons are more or less a word bearers thing. And then word bearers realize that they can get possessed by demons, and then they weaponize the possession by making the Galvorback, where the Thousand Sons technically never made a Galvorback. Yes, those are greater demons. So in Heresy, there's actually something bigger than greater demons, and it's called archdemons, and that's your Titan slaying demons. These are demons that fight warhounds, like the giant mechs. They fight them. Greater demons are the ones that fight like heroes and dreadnoughts and big monsters and things like that. And then you have a lower class of demon, but this is actually relevant because this is what the Thousand Sons were doing. They were summoning creatures from the warp on their planet. And we know this because of Iskandar Khayan, who was telling this to an inquisitor in the book Talon of Horus. And this is a lot of what the Thousand Sons were doing during the heresy. They were summoning. They were using their knowledge gained by these malevolent creatures, mischievous demons, to use more psychic powers, which caused them more psychic backlash, which ultimately damned the entire chapter or entire legion to a fate of turning to dust. It was all part of the great plan of Tzeentch. The thing that stepped in to stop that was the Emperor. And that's why the Council of Nikaea is super important. Now, the Thousand Sons were training other librarians at the time. That was one of the things that they did, which is weird because in 40k, the Blood Ravens do a very similar thing. It's kind of a tie to them, but anyway. The Thousand Sons were going a bit excessive with all their powers. They were trying to teach other people all these powers, and there was nothing to keep them in check. So, when the Emperor decided, when other chapters had their concerns, they brought it before the Emperor, and the Emperor called the Council of Nikaea. They were malevolent. They were just silly little guys. The other chapters were overreacting. Yeah. There should be more undivided demons with models. I fully agree. Because all we have is Furies, the Chaos Brutes. Technically, the Demon Prince, you could build an undivided version of it. God, this is not a lot. Yeah, there's just not a lot. Oh, I also have to explain where Runestorm demons are. Runestorm demons are from the Runestorm, which is caused by the Word Eater. I get it. I called them the Word Eaters. The Word Bearers, which opened up almost a direct psychic storm into the warp itself, which then summoned demons that were not bound and were ultimately endless unless you stopped the summoning of the demons themselves. The demons would eventually fade out because if they killed too much, they would just out of existence. Whoops, I didn't mean to click that. Sorry about that. The Word Eaters and the World Bearers. Honestly, the World Bear... I can't. My dyslexia is beating the hell out of me today. I am so sorry. But the Word Eater sounds hilarious. I'm just saying that. And the World Bearers sounds like a chapter that actually brings life to planets. It sounds like a Tau exploration fleet. Man, okay. So we got demons out of the way. We got that the Thousand Sons were summoning demons. We got that demons were being used as tools, and sorcery and magics were being used as weapons against the Space Marines themselves, the Adeptus Astartes. We got that the legions were feeling unease about the fact that all of these psychic powers were being used unsupervised. And now, technically, Magnus did try to say, well, I'm supervising them. He wasn't, but he pretended that he was. So the Council of Nikaea was called, and it was called by the Emperor of Mankind, which is huge. And this was the last gathering during the Great Crusade before the betrayal. And it's massive. Like, I don't think people realize how important the Council of Nikaea was, how important it was that all of these legions met up. It's actually kind of crazy. And then there's the whole hypocrisy of needing a psychic beacon to get through the planet itself, which further showed that you need psychic powers in order to travel within Warhammer 40k, because the planets themselves are so deadly, and these warp storms are so deadly, and warp travel needs psychers. Yeah. Let me grab a drink really quickly because my throat is getting dry. Okay. Let me just read my notes really quickly that I have off to the side because I am smart and totally prepared ahead of time. I did not. So the Council of Nikaea would also be called the Trial of Magnus, as well as the Hearing of the Thousand. The Hearing of the Thousand came later when they tried to disassociate it from Magnus, because in the 40k universe versus the Horus Heresy universe, in 40k they tried to say that none of the Chaos Primarchs existed. In fact, if you ask an Imperial citizen, there are only 9 Primarchs, which is super interesting. I always love that. But the Council of Nikaea was called, and all of these legions had to make an appearance at it. Magnus was definitely the one fully on trial here. His legion was like definitely crossing lines that they really shouldn't be crossing. Um, and it was only, 2 other Primarchs that came to his side to actually defend him, and the rest were pretty much against him. But out of the other Primarchs that showed up, we had Leman Russ of the Space Wolves, we had Korax, Rogel Dorn, Mortarion. I don't think Horus showed up. I'm pretty sure Horus didn't show up. But there was a bunch of other Primarchs and a bunch of other legions that showed up, and there's a whole subplot of, the oh my god, brain work. The Alpha Legion that is here as well, and we'll get into that. But Sanguinius and Jagatai Khan are the only two other Primarchs that stood up to the Emperor and been like, hey, we actually do need psychic powers. They're pretty cool and they help us navigate, and the Librarius hasn't caused too much of an issue for us. Also, keep in mind that a lot of these psychic backlashes and things of that nature weren't really happening to a few of the legions. They did, however, happen to the Thousand Sons, and it's actually the first instance of a psychic backlash in a book, and I really like that. We do have a super chat here. Boop. It was also planned years in advance before the Great Crusade and always meant to happen, according to one of Mortarian's books. Yes, it was. In fact, even when the Thousand Suns were showing up to the planet itself, there was a beacon of golden light that appeared through the storm around the planet to guide everybody to the plateau where it was being held. And this was all a premonition by Armin of the Thousand Suns. And he was just like, damn it. Which is pretty much the appropriate reaction when one of your premonitions of things going bad happens. It's kind of like when you get deja vu and you're just like, ah, dang it, I didn't do that exact thing. Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. But thank you for the super chat. Super chats do help out us a lot here at Lorebeards, and yeah, it keeps us going. And it keeps me doing stupid stuff like building a bunch of shields. I built a total of 9 shields in like a week, and I'm really happy with them. Sorry, that's a random tangent. Ba, 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 ba. Let's see with this one. Personally, I find the idea that the Emperor dissolved the Librarius to appease Mortarion and the other Primarchs ridiculous. Mortarion had already dissolved the Death Guard's Librarius decades earlier. Yes, he did. In fact, a bunch of his Primarchs, Mortarion's Legion was one of the few legions that practiced their psychic powers in secret. Typhus was very well known for this. But there was a growing resentment for Mortarion within his own legion, and dissolving his Librarius was only part of this. So a lot of the legions that did dissolve their Librarius, Mortarians and Angrons, there was growing resentment within their legions. Though the word World Eaters, I'm not going to screw it up anymore. I'm going to screw it up for the rest of this. But the World Eaters they're more loyal than the Death Guard. The Death Guard is strangely one of those legions that is more loyal to Typhus than it is to Mortarion. They'll listen to Mortarion, but they really don't like him. And I find it super amusing. Also, Mortarion is extremely petty. Mortarion was one of the loudest voices at the Council of Nikaea. He absolutely hated with a passion the idea of psychers, which is ironic because he is a psyker. Like, the ultimate irony is that he was a psyker the whole time. And a good chunk of the Primarchs were made with psychic powers. Like, you had to use psychic powers or warp energies to make the Primarchs. There was a whole deal with the Chaos Gods by the Emperor, possibly. We still don't know the exact contents of whatever happened there. We just know that something happened and the Emperor gained the knowledge to make the Primarchs, or had the knowledge to make the Primarchs and still had to do that. We don't know. Which that's one of the biggest mysteries in Warhammer, and I don't want it to ever be explained, but I do want a book about people speculating on it. Because some mysteries I feel like should be mysteries, and I think that meeting with the Chaos Gods should be a mystery. But yeah, Mortarion was one of the most loud voices against the use of psychers. Same with the Space Wolves, which is super ironic because they have their they're called Storm Seers, right? Or they're wolf priests. No, it's not wolf priests. Oh my god, why am I getting the name of their psychers mixed up? It is not wolf priests. They don't have them anymore. What are they called? What are the Oh my god. I have the image of them in my brain and the word is just gone. I'm so good at this. Um, but yeah, those two legions made well, the Space Wolves Legion made heavy use of psychic powers. The Mortarian's Legion has their first captain is a psyker, Mortarion is a psyker, and they just Mortarion ultimately hates himself. Like, yeah. Ba, 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 ba. Sorry, just got to read a couple of things really quickly. So Magnus was put on trial, and basically every single legion was Malkador was also at the Council of Nikaea, which is super huge, and a lot of the people were free to talk, including captains. We don't really have too much evidence that too many captains actually spoke up. Unfortunately, I do wish that there were more like Imperial Navy officers, or not Imperial Navy, Sola Auxilia officers that actually spoke up on this, which would be really cool. But it's mostly the big voices that were the ones that really presented themselves. But Magnus gave a speech that swayed the hearts of many there. Magnus explained that without navigators, without warp powers, without the Emperor himself, that they would absolutely they absolutely needed psychers, and it was up to him and his legion to teach them. And through the use of psychers, they can achieve something that that humanity has never sought before, which is to control the unknown. And he gave this elegant and beautiful speech, and he really got through to a bunch of people, and they still decided against him. Like, the big thing was the emperor wasn't swayed. The emperor called for the emperor called for the complete destruction. Sorry, not destruction. How to put this? Delusion, not delusion. That's not the right word. I get storm seeker. Okay, I got this. The emperor did forbid the use of psychers on the battlefield, and thus those same psychers now had to rejoin their legion as just battle brothers. But they were still the most distrusted battle brothers. Like, yeah, the librarian that was just shooting lightning out of his hands now is packing a bolter and saying that they're your brother right next to you. Nah, something's not right. Something's off. Um, oh yeah, the Khan had his chief Stormseer represented. Yes, he did. He was one of the voices to speak up uh, in protest of the dismantling of the libraries. Reading notes really quickly. Usually I have a Ross to distract while I do this, so I do apologize. Korax and Rogaldorn were both legions that absolutely refused the use of their librarians. In fact, Rogaldorn locked them all up on the Phalanx, and it's really funny. Um, the Council of Nikaea was a damned kangaroo court. It It kind of was, in a way, because they did let everyone speak. They did let everyone give their points of view. And I do wish that we got more about Mortarion actually getting, not Mortarion, sorry, Magnus getting more backing from like his loyal subjects. Like, because there is a Sola Auxilia detachment that is with Magnus. And you would think that maybe some of them would speak up if they were allowed, or maybe some of his captains would speak up about him. Maybe even Iskandar Khayan would have spoke up about him, but Iskandar Khayan kind of bailed at that point. Well, he didn't bail. He stayed until the full destruction of their legion. And he was just like, nah, I'm not doing anything to help any of you. Armin's an idiot. And I like Iskandar Khayan a lot better than I like Asimir. God, my voice is so cracked. Mm. Well, I was expecting you to say how Magnus's speech totally changed people's minds, specifically against him. No, he tried his best. He actually presented reason and allowances for psychers and mutations that allowed psychic powers, like the navigators, to exist within the Imperium. And unfortunately, while the navigators were completely accepted because they're absolutely needed, the emperor wasn't yet ready to unveil his, his great plan. He didn't make Horus the war master at this point yet. Uh, he really he really needed to protect his legions. Like that's the biggest problem is that Magnus was so close to being fully corrupted by chaos, and he was so self-obsessed that he didn't realize how close he was and how much of himself he's already given willingly over to Zinch. And the Emperor's just like, hey, cool your jets. This shit's whack. I need to prevent you guys from using full psychic powers, so you're gonna stop doing this. Um Sorry, reading chat really quickly. Can I ask how Magnus's speech is an alteration of? Ooh. That is going to be a question for Ross. I am so sorry. I am not knowledgeable enough on Magnus. He is. He could definitely answer that. So in about 20, 30 minutes, he'll probably be here and he can help out with that. I the best moments of the council is when I don't know how to say his name and I don't want to butcher it. Speaks up accompanied by a delegation of librarians from other legions. Yes, it is. So I just want to read through my notes really quickly so that I can properly give stuff. Oh yeah, one of the big parts of the speech itself that Magnus gave was that the emperor needed to use his psychic powers to guide people to his meeting point. Like, yeah, like it's so obvious that the Imperium needs. Oh, is that how you pronounce it? Yashagul Guli? Yeah, what language? Like it's supposed to be Mongolian, right? So it would be like Golai. I'm not gonna try to pronounce it. Ba, 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 ba. Oh yeah, and this storm that was around this planet was so powerful it could have torn ships apart if not for the Emperor's psychic guidance. And it's such a moment of like, hey, here's something that we need to guide us to destinations, but the Emperor's just like, nah, that doesn't count. Um, so one of the big things about the council chamber is that it was built years ahead of time by Perturabo. Perturabo, this is actually one of the biggest achievements for Perturabo in the entire heresy. And for some reason, in any of the other books, he never brings up that the fact that the Emperor tasked him with designing and building the council chambers because he needed to build it out of certain materials and a certain way to try to prevent all of these psychers from damaging or destroying or obliterating the actual planet itself, because psychers in 40k are simply that. They If they go too catatonic, if they backlash too much, if they perils too much, they can become a danger to everything around them. They can start a storm so powerful that it can consume the entire planet. In fact, if one psyker has a psychic backlash, it could trigger other psychers to also have a perils of the warp incident, which might start a chain reaction to obliterate all of this stuff. And it's great and I love it. So Perturabo was tasked with building a to build this temple to actually contain all of these psychers in the event that they all go nuclear. And then he never brings it up. Like, Perturabo is one of those characters who's like, I have never achieved anything. When the Emperor trusted him to build something that powerful, it it boggles my mind because I love Perturabo as a character, and I think he's a great. I I am one of the weird people that absolutely love Perturabo as a character. I know, weird. I get why he's treated the way he's treated, and I get why he feels the way he feels. But this is a major achievement to him. Like, the Emperor could have just asked Rogel Dorn to build this thing, but instead he trusted Perturabo. Uh, let's see. Mhm. Oh yeah, the actual building itself was made out of a what kinda it was made out of a hollowed out volcano, which is also super funny. And I have a sneaking suspicion because they mention Blackstone. Now, if those of you that don't know, Blackstone in 40k could be Noctilith. Noctilith, however you want to pronounce it, is the Blackstone used by the Necrons themselves. This stone has the ability um, to either amplify psychic powers or turbo dampen psychic powers or completely shut off your connection to the warp itself. And it's it's mentioned in the construction, but it's never really brought up. So I don't know if this is actually Nakalith or if it's Blackstone or if it's just Obsidian. Because Obsidian also has a property of dampening psychic powers, just not too much. But I think that's a holdover from Warhammer Fantasy and not an actual too big a thing in Warhammer 40k. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much thought into that, but my brain immediately just goes, Perturabo built this thing using Blackstone. Well, is that is that what I think it is? Because if it is, that would be a great use of Blackstone in a narrative without ever mentioning that it is Necron tech, which is really, really cool. And I absolutely love that. Again, another use of hypocrisy in Warhammer 40k because it is super funny that the Emperor forbids you from using alien technology, yet will use the Necron's own pylon network. Will make sure no one destroys it. Will entrap Catan in Mars. Will use all of this other stuff that is definitely like the Blackstone fortresses. Will use them uh, and then be like, no, you can't use alien technology. Destroy the alien. And then it's like, you guys can't use psychic powers. I can use psychic powers, though. That's totally fine. Malkador can also use psychic powers. It's totally fine. Ooh, here's a comment. I don't think it's Noctilith because psychic powers are used during the trial. And there's a whole thing with the demons disguised as Amon. Yes, there is a demon in the Council of Nikaea that none of the Psychers or the Emperor or Malkador detect. And it's just crystal and volcanic rock. So what I think it is here's my theory about it: that it actually is Blackstone, like the Necron Notholith, but it's not active because you do need to activate them in order for them to do something. Just saying. But it is really, really funny that a demon managed to sneak in to an event where the Emperor is, and the Emperor's just like, hey, wait a second, is that a demon? Nah, it's fine. Uh, maybe they just invited the demon. He could just be a chill. I I also do personally think that that demon might have been the changeling, and that could explain it. But that demon is also different because it is a name. It's not a named demon. It is Amon in a disguise, but it's not the changeling. But it could be the changeling. Again, the Council of Nikaea has 1,000 rumors around it, and I'm trying to address some of them as we go through this. Ba, 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 ba. Anything on the line? I'm trying to read my notes really quickly. I do apologize. Uh, the security within the council chamber was done by the Adeptus Custodes and the Sisters of Silence. They get mentioned in this, which is amazing. Which is also weird because the Sisters of Silence are there and people are just freely using psychic powers. Though it is mentioned that Magnus has trouble seeing them. Like he knows that there's something there, and he's like, "Oh, this is weird. I feel disgust." Um, Love Perturabo, also Rust, who is a psyker. Mm, mm, it's okay. All right. So sort of, but no, kinda. Uh, it depends. In some Space Wolves books, it's implied that BE helps refine Space Wolves warp using it, and said it was okay. So uh Lehman Russ gets a lot of help from the Emperor and from Malkador. Um he also has premonitions, but premonitions don't make you a psyker. Sisters of Battle have premonitions, and none of them are psychers. In fact, if there is a psychic sister of battle, usually they're banished, sent to the well, usually they're killed or they're sent to not rogue traders, Inquisition. Or they're put on black ships and just sacrificed to the Emperor. But in his Primarch book, he summoned up a psychic storm. Again, I wouldn't say that this is exactly proof that he is a psyker. As I know this is weird to say. I know this is weird to say. But source books state that he is not a psyker, and the black books also state that he is not a psyker. The heresy books do go into detail about how he can use it, but it's like I said, it depends with him. It's very weird with him because he's also around the Sisters of Silence so much, so it's never really. It could also be a defense that he's never seen by anybody else as a psyker because every time he shows up to one of his brothers, he has a Sister of Silence standing next to him. Big day for the Sister of Silence fans. Hell yeah, we get mentioned. uh and the demon is not hindered by the Sisters of by the Silent Sisterhood. Yeah, there's a lot with the writer about the Council of Nikaea where they kind of just had to make things happen because otherwise there was a lot of things in place that the demon would not actually be able to get past, like the Sisters of Silence existing, the Sisters of Silence actually being experts at demon hunting, all of those psychers in the room not being able to detect a warp creature, Malkador not being able to detect a warp creature, the Emperor not being able to, unless the Emperor and Malkador both knew that it was going to happen, which goes into a whole nother thing about how the Emperor had to plan for the Horus Heresy and how he was trying to make it so that not half the Primarchs fell, but only some of them that he didn't want around. Yeah. All the Primarchs have psychic potential, but they express it in different ways. Yes, they have the yes is the answer to this, but again, I wouldn't class them as psychers. Uh They're more weirdly enough, they're more like the Sisters of Battle than they are psychers sometimes because they kinda just will things into existence. Um, yeah, again, it's very weird, but they do have a warp connection. That is a big part of them, is that the Primarchs do have a connection to the warp. Whether or not that is, through the use of psychic powers or through having a very bright soul, we do not know. Some of them just flat out are psychers, like Sanguinius and Mortarion are just psychers. We know this. Magnus, obviously a psycher. Let's see if there's other comments about this. So before we move on. Uh, oh, this is a good one. There's a Space Wolf Rune Priest character that reveals something in a story to Azik Araman. Yeah, yeah. The So Space Wolves actually did see a Perils of the Warp from A Thousand Sun. They have seen that, and that was one of the big things that they reported on. Um, let's see. Ooh, got a super chat in just a moment. I'll get to that. Boop, there we go. I think Perturabo not seeing his own achievements, not seeing his own achievements, I think is part of the point. He is obsessed with others, not seeing. Yeah, it it really is true. Like Perturabo is written in a way that he has achieved a ton as a Primarch. He sieged Terra. Like, he didn't win, he wasn't a sister battle, but, he did it. He sieged Terra. He took the Lion's Gate. He took the spaceport. Without him, Horus was screwed. But for some reason, Perturabo can't get out of his own way, and he wants others to see his achievements, but doesn't wanna be the person that's like, "Hey, I did something great." And other Primarchs feel like he doesn't need that he doesn't want that attention-seeking behavior, so they never mention it to him. This is why you should always tell your friends that you're proud of them. No matter what it is, just tell your friends you're happy to be around them, you're proud of them, that you're proud of their achievements. Remind them of things that they've done in their past that you are happy that they did. It's very weird. That took a little bit of a weird turn, but, especially in this month, which is, Pride Month, but it's also Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So use this as a way of learning and talking to your friends, see how they're actually doing, and tell them that you're happy to be around them and you're proud of the achievements that they have made in their lives. That's just a message from Alexis. Anyway, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. So we don't get an exact number of the Adeptus Custodes' presence on the Council of Nikaea. We also don't get an exact number of the Sisters of Silence that are present at the Council of Nikaea. We just know that there is a substantial amount. Uh, ooh, correct shadow walking, is that psychic nature or is that a cast spell? It's mm, is it technology or is it magic? Is always the question in Warhammer 40k. Uh, Blanks are inconsistent even by GW standards. Absolutely. They are one of the most inconsistent things in the lore itself. They are inconsistent in their own books. There could be chapter to chapter where they are just completely inconsistent. Do you know that Sisters of Silence have the ability to freeze locks with their hands because their soul is so cold? Yeah, good thing that never comes up again. That's a thing in a book. They can also amplify their blankness and cause people to have aneurysms that aren't psychers. So sometimes their psychic powers are insanely good, sometimes they are not. Ba, 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 ba. Ooh, we do know how many Space Wolves did show up to this. It was 3 great companies of Space Wolves. Now, we don't know how many Space Wolves is a great company, so but it's a lot of Space Wolves. I would say it's at least 300 Space Wolves. And here's the question to you. Was this a show of force or was this a just a way to protect the emperor? I think that this was a threat towards Magnus. I feel like this is the hey, if you do anything, we're going to kill you moment. Where the emperor is just like, mm-hmm, I have Lehman Russ here, I have Jagatai here. If you do anything, I can sick these two on you. Weirdly enough, the Dark Angels didn't, as far as I could tell, didn't send a representative to the Council of Nikaea. I could be wrong about this, but in my notes, I have it that Dark Angels didn't show up. At least 5 Space Wolves. Yep. Um, and blank. Oh yeah, the Ravner books where lore isn't properly written down. In the Ravner books, they have jet bikes. Just saying. Blank limiters in Ravners. How does that work? What does it give them? Partial soul? It's so weird. Uh, It was all aimed at Magnus and his legion, in my opinion. Yes, I personally think that this was a threat towards Magnus. Like, you're going to yield to me now, or I'm going to destroy you. And even at the end of it, he does say something to the lines of, "If you disobey me, I will destroy you," which we find out are empty threats, which is weird because the Emperor is not known for making empty threats. Typically, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to smite you," and then proceeds to smite you. Um, Kind of the same with Horus, to be honest. Bu- I'm still reading notes. So the council itself was presided over by Malkador the Sigillite, the Lord Regent of Terra, and he was the one that allowed anybody to come to the floor and speak. It was thanks to him that captains could speak, the librarians could speak. For those of you that don't know, captains are super important. Then you have lieutenants. Then you have, excuse me, the Councilorus. And the Councilorus has things like your chapter champion, your standard bearer, your chaplains, your Mordathan, not Mordathan, what are they called? The two pistol guy. I can't remember what they're called right now, but it had all of the different like unique subcategories of commanders, your Armathist and things of that nature. And they were allowed to speak, which normally they don't have a voice in a legion, except for in certain legions that have secret council meetings. But he allowed everybody and anybody to speak at this. But it was very clear that a lot of this was aimed directly at Magnus. Magnus was kind of the one directly put on trial here. And it wasn't even like hidden. It was like, oh yeah, we're talking about disbanding the librarians, but also Magnus, stop being a giant dick. Also, why do you have horns sticking out of your nipples? That's not good for your mental health. Um, if you don't know, Magnus has weird like chest armor that has bull horns on it for some reason. I think it's to stop people from charging him directly. He probably put it in as an anti-space wolf measure. Ba, 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 ba. The primary objective of the Council of Nikaea was to determine what to do about the librarian crisis. A lot librarians were starting to get a little bit out of control. The numbers were growing a bit too fast. Psychic space marines were arriving too fast for the legions to really deal with, and they really they were starting to get corrupted. Like, that was the big thing, is they didn't know the exact wording yet, but the legions were going to be, if they didn't like put an end to this, the legions could have actually faced corruption from within by, well, chaos corruption, because of the fact that they have too many librarians that don't have enough control over themselves. Because there weren't the schools of librarius yet. They were just what Magnus taught you and hope for the best. There weren't like psychic levels yet. There weren't head librarians that taught lower class librarians on how to better control their powers. There wasn't real history about it yet. This was all happening. This is the first time it was happening, so they had to set standards. Um, the biggest thing about Magnus, though, is he was accused of sorcery, which sorcery is kind of one of those hot button issues in Warhammer 40k, where sorcery is direct use of warp energies to alter real space. And that's kind of a big pickle. That's what summons demons into reality. That's what leads to possessions. That's what leads to the damning of one's soul. Yeah. If the warp starts talking to you and says, "I'll take your eye," don't willingly give your eye to some malevolent creature. Or yeah, don't give your eye to some evil creature. Just, it's kind of like if you find yourself in the talking to a fae, you don't just give it a body part. You don't even give it your name. Like, yeah. Whew. The Emperor did that. Yeah, the Emperor kind of did. It worked for Odin. No, it didn't. It did not work for Odin. In fact, the whole thing was the Norns telling Odin that he was going to die, and him asking the Norns how to not do that, and he was like and they were just like, "Nope, nope." Although the whole Ragnarok event is all about, like, renewal and rebirth, and it's the cycle of seasons, not this yeah. Oh, yeah, it's the Moritat, um, that has the 2 guns. Yeah, which is what Cypher was, which he was also the Legion Cypher, which is weird. Okay. Sorry, reading notes really quickly. My apologies. Oh, okay. So I just got a message really quickly. Oh no, Ross, you're so late. What the heck? Okay. So one of the biggest things about this was that a lot of people were scared of the ramifications of Old Night and the fact that it might be happening again with Magnus. Uh, I I fully understand like why the legions were so scared of psychic powers, and I believe at this point um no, it wasn't at this point. It wasn't until later. Sorry, my apologies. Let's read this super chat. Thank you again. You're awesome. Happy Pride, by the way, as someone who has studied queerness in the Viking Age. If you sent a rune priest back in time, the Vikings would see them as a gay shutout. Yeah. Although the concept of masculinity and femininity that we have today is way different than it was during the 950s to the 1160s. Uh, like if you read the sagas, there's times when Odin and Thor and even Loki all change into the opposite sex, which is kind of neat. Uh, yeah, queerness in the Viking culture is very much a big thing. One of the things that's really funny is during the festivals we call it Gay Viking Summer because our festival is during Pride Month, so it's always funny. Pink was a boy color. Boy wasn't even a word yet. Boy was used for anybody, regardless of gender. But yeah, that's all. Yeah. It's also up for debate if Ragnarok is fated to happen or not. The story of Ragnarok is just a changing of the seasons. Like the actual story is about destruction and renewal, which takes is during the time of the solstice when it's the coldest, and that's the Ragnarok event that it gets warmer and warmer, and that's the regrowth, and thus it goes as destruction and renewal constantly in the giant circle. But that's a whole thing. Although there are different interpretations of Ragnarok and its story, but I can tell you that Ragnarok is actually not that important to Viking culture, which is super important, which is super funny. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about Vikings and how cool they are. We are talking about the Council of Nikaea. And I am trying to keep this going the best I can, but there is uh, oh, hi, Kovu. All right, let me check my notes really quickly. My apologies. Loki turning into a horse. Yeah, Loki did turn into a horse and then give birth to 3 kids. That's the thing that happened. Also Kofu. Okay. So, the testimony of the Crimson King. Um, there's a quote by Magnus that is absolutely hilarious, and I think that this quote is unironically one of the funniest things that Magnus has ever said. He said, "If I am guilty of anything, it is the simple pursuit of knowledge." Which, if you know anything about the pursuit of knowledge and the warp, that is very, very dumb and bad. And even the Emperor was like, "Wow, cool. So you're gonna do it regardless. All right, I gotta cut this right now." You know? Ba, 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 ba. Sorry, I gotta read. notes really quickly. This is where I would have like, you know, Ross talk or Ross would or I'd be talking and then Ross would be reading. So my apologies about all of this. I'm not very good at going solo while having notes. All of my stuff is usually just free free of scripts and things of that, but I have to be more professional on this channel, which is hard for me because I love just doing things. Uh he is not wrong, but it's easy to be wrong when you are uneducated. Oh, oh, you're n yeah, that's one of the big things about, yeah. So, the problem with Magnus is that he thought he was correct, and he came from a place where he is correct. So, outside opinions of him not being correct are not things that he would consider. It would be a foreign concept to him because he is assuming that he comes from a place that is logical and reasonable, and he has shut out any and all other thoughts that could possibly fight him on that. And then, when presented with evidence that shows that he is wrong, he simply denied it because he had no way of uh, being. He had no way of processing that information that, hey, you gave your eye for all of this knowledge, you gave all of your stuff for all of this knowledge, but the knowledge you gain is incorrect. It's like, hey, you now have the ability to do 1,000 math problems a second. The problem is that all of them are wrong. Yeah, you gained the knowledge on how to do that many math problems really quickly, but you came to the wrong conclusion. And that was what happened with Magnus, is that he reached the wrong conclusion and asserted that he was correct. Um, and when people fought him on that, he simply gave these lavish speeches about pointing out hypocrisy within the Imperium, which doesn't work against a hypocritical governmental system. You have to get them to side with you on key issues that they agree with already and slowly make them think that they are the ones that are coming up with the ideas. This is kind of a way that we have to change the US government, just saying. But yeah. But uh NES Ragnarok is super important because of post Viking age Christian writers. Those came in the 1400s. They came way later. Like the sagas came way after the Viking age. It's really funny. Like most of the sagas and things of that nature came from Iceland too. My cat is scratching the floor. But anyway, there's like 2 or 3 museums here. Ross is out by 10 minutes. That's pretty cool. Magnus was right in my opinion. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Was he though? Um, okay, so from your perspective, Magnus was correct. The pursuit of knowledge was way more important to the Imperium than the ignorance of fighting against it. Uh, if I'm correct on what you're saying, Godzilla Rex. Um, let's see. But if Magnus was correct about the Council of Nikaea and that the Astartes desperately needed the Librarius. See, okay, all right, okay, all right. How to explain this? Magnus was right that the Imperium desperately needed the Librarius, which is why every single legion, outside of a few like the World Eaters, used Psykers the second the heresy started. In fact, Dark Angels didn't even attest to the Council of like Nikaea. They didn't even listen to it. They were just like, no, we're just going to keep using our Psykers. And it's really really weird because one of the big things was they didn't even acknowledge it. Like they were just like, oh, that's a thing. Nah, not for us. So they just kept using their Psykers. Where Rogel Dorn kept his locked up until Nathaniel Garrow talked to him and let him take one of his Psykers. That's a whole nother side story. But Even Rogel Dorn refused during the siege, tried to refuse using his psychers. Really, really hindrance. Like the big hindrance was that even the Ultramarines refused to use their librarians while they were fighting demons. They blatantly refused until Nathaniel Garrow showed up and was just like, "Hey, use your magic powers to fight the magic creatures." And the one guy's like, "I can't do that. I would betray my Primarch." Bro, do it or everyone dies. All right, warp lightning. Oh, dang it, that was super effective against demons. Demons are like psychic types. They're weak against psychic powers. That's a whole joke from Pokemon for you. Um, but it is one of those things where I could see the argument for Magnus being right about the librarians, but not about his pursuit of knowledge. His pursuit of knowledge was not only dangerous, it was stupidly dangerous. Let's see if there's other comments here. Biggie made it really hard for his sons not to be wrong when he didn't tell them anything about it. Yeah. So there were very few Primarchs that actually did know about chaos. The big one being Lion knew about it. Lehman Russ also knew about chaos. Magnus, to a lesser extent, knew about chaos, but most of them didn't. They were completely ignorant of it. And that ignorance was actually a very effective weapon against demons. The power of not believing in demons is something that is super powerful against demons. Denying their existence is a way of overpowering demons with your own willpower, which is why Begone Thought works against demons of Slanesh, which is hilarious. Talked about the Viking stuff. Vikings didn't do a lot of most Vikings were illiterate. Like most Scandinavians were illiterate. Most people in the world at the time were illiterate. They couldn't read. Also, there are some things that the Vikings wrote down, and it was like Jon Jonsson was here, and this looks like a penis, and things like that. And it's actually really funny. There's an artifact with penis written on it, and it's super funny. And it's from the Viking Age. Vikings were basically like your stereotypical dude bros. It's really funny. You could even say Magnus did nothing wrong. Yeah, he did almost everything wrong, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. It's not how Psychic works in Pokemon. Look, I'm an old school Pokemon fan. Psychic was super effective against Psychic back in the day. I remember I played the first couple of games. I haven't played Pokemon in the Pokemon actual games in years. Like almost 15 years. Longer than 15 years. 17 years. I haven't played a Pokemon game. I collect Pokemon cards though. I'm loving the newest set. I'm trying to master collect this set. It's a lot of fun. I have weird obsessions. Yeah, I think the ignorance doesn't help in 40k, and the modern imperial system is ignorant of warp stuff for the most part, and warp stuff keeps happening to him. Well, that's mostly because the Cicatrix Maledictum tore across half the entire galaxy. But they replaced not believing in stuff with the belief in the God Emperor. And the belief of the God Emperor, like the actual belief itself of you being powerful to defeat a demon, is what makes you powerful to defeat a demon. Like, demons are only really defeated in 40k by being banished. They're not killed. There are very few weapons in 40k that can actually kill a demon. And by kill, I mean permanently separate their energy from their god. Because if you don't know, all demons are essentially part of their god itself. And little parts of them become like the lesser demons, the greater demons, and the other demons, the archdemons, and things of that nature. Sorry, just answering a few questions before Ross gets here so that we can keep going. I'm trying to save the juicy parts for Ross because I know he wants to talk about this a lot, and this is one of his favorite subjects. So if I seem a little sparse on the information, it's because I'm waiting for my co-host to appear because I don't want to be like, hey, we finished covering the Council of Nikaea. Yeah, we're all done. Sorry. So Um, let's see. What does this one say? For me, the council's end was a political endpoint. Yes, yes, I fully agree with that. Everyone being forbidden was so Magnus would think that because others got. Yeah, yeah. I do fully agree with that comment. I do think that the Emperor was punishing strictly Magnus, but was like, I'll do it to everybody because that way, Magnus doesn't specifically think I'm targeting him, even though it's kind of like when you see an old person like staring at somebody and they're like, I'm not being mean, but I disapprove of your lifestyle, and they're just standing at you like this, you know? It's like that. That's the Emperor. He's a grumpy old man. Um Uh, so what you're saying is that if you give a man nuclear grade copium, that he could solo the Chaos Gods. I wouldn't say solo the Chaos Gods. Defeat lesser demons? Probably, which is pretty funny. It depends if the lesser demon is a demon that is made out of warp stuff, or if it's a demon that took hold of a person's body and fully transformed it into the demon. Because there are multiple ways demons are summoned in Warhammer 40k, and none of them are consistent with each other, which is the way demons are supposed to be. But needless to say, the energy that makes up a demon that appears in our reality isn't actually there. It's part of the alternate reality called the warp. And that presence there can be denied hard enough that it doesn't exist in our reality anymore, which is really, really funny that a blankie can defend you against a chaos demon. Um, it's also why things like when they sterilize a planet after Nurgle has been there, they believe it's working, and it kind of works. It's very weird, but it still kind of works like that. Uh, I posted a mini if you're trying to kill time. I'm not trying to kill time. I am trying to answer questions about this while I can. I'm totally trying to kill time because Ross said he would be here in 10 minutes, and that was 10 minutes. That was 20 minutes ago. Man. All right. Um. Ooh. According to the Black Book, Dorn also knew about chaos and had the imperial household sanctioned to study the occult texts. See, that is very Rogel Dorn of him. Like, I could definitely see him knowing about chaos and just being like, all right, we need to understand this. We need to be able to destroy it, but I don't want it to get out that we know about this. Wait, so orcs aren't the only people with the power of belief? Orcs don't have the power of belief anymore. That was mostly moved to the Imperium. And it's very weird. Orcs have an innate understanding of the technologies of the galaxy itself, of all technologies of all alien races, and through their collective Wa energy can they recall the information on how to use it, but they don't have the brain capacity to explain how they use it. So it's like they're rocket engineers, but they're like a 6-year-old, but they can build a perfectly functioning rocket. Ba, ba, ba. So. One of the big things about the Council of Nikaea is that when the Horus Heresy did break out, is that most of them threw this decision to the wind. Most of the legions just outright went, we don't care about the Council of Nikaea at all. We're using our librarians because we need to use every bit of power we have in order to defeat the traitors. So they started reinstating their librarians. Dark Angels famously didn't discontinue the use of their librarians. Some more secretive librarians stayed active, like the Alpha Legion ones, and they just started reusing them, reissuing them their warp weapons, and reissuing them all of their gear and everything. Told them to get back onto the battlefield because they were desperately needed to defeat Horus's forces. But in doing so, a lot of those librarians would fall to Horus. Now, I wish we had the numbers for this because you know me, I love my numbers. I do wish we got a breakdown of how many librarians per faction fell to chaos because I have a sneaking suspicion that it was more librarians than anything else fell to the power of. My cat just almost fell off his tree. Okay, he's fine. Yeah, he's just hanging there. Look at him. But there were several chapters that just started using more dangerous and more esoteric. In fact, they started using Legion esoterics, the Chaos Space Marines, y- legions that fell to chaos themselves. They would actually start using things like Legion esoterics, who would summon demons in. That was one.
Hello!
Hello, Ross. You made it.
I did. Sorry for
Good.
the delay, everyone.
I could stop stalling. I was totally stalling.
Were you stalling this whole time? My
A
goodness.
little bit.
Oh, my goodness.
But I did go over some of the Council of Nikaea. I wanted to save the good bits for you because I know that this is like your wheelhouse. You want to talk about this.
It's one of my favorite things to discuss is the Council of Nikaea.
Exactly.
Or excuse me, the trial of Magnus the Red.
I think you mean the trial of 1,000, the
Yeah.
hearing of 1,000.
Yeah. Who are you, Narqueen Alexis?
Oh, I already introduced myself. It's up to you.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Ross Watson. I am the co-host of this wonderful show. Alexis is generous and kind and held the door long enough for me to get here. And I'm very, very grateful to her. You should all be very grateful to her for keeping the flag flying on this one, guys. So I am a game designer and an author. I worked on a whole bunch of Warhammer 40k roleplay, several Warhammer 40k video games. I was on the US White Dwarf team for a couple of years. And if you like the lore for Rogue Traders and the Death Watch, that was me mostly. So I'm here to I'm here to talk about the Trial of Magnus the Red or the Council of Nikaea. Woo! Biofoot, I don't have any cookies. I wish I had cookies.
See, I told you he was gonna forget.
Biofoot, thank you so much for the super chat. In case you're not aware, and in case Alexis didn't say it, super chats are the best way to keep the channel going and to support the hosts, including myself. So we are very grateful to everyone who chooses to super chat with us. So where are we exactly? Have we talked about the background?
A little bit.
Okay.
I talked about why the Council of Nikaea was so needed because the legions were starting to face more and more corruption, and they were facing more and more sorceries and more things that were starting to use like warp powers and things.
Right, but this actually begins though during the Unification Wars.
Ooh, go off.
Okay, so during the Unification Wars, when the Emperor was conquering region after region on the hellscape that was Terra prior to the Great Crusade, many times he encountered regions that were ruled by witch kings, ruled by foul psychers, people who had taken their psychic powers and used them in very different ways. It's obviously we're seeing this through the lens of the Imperium, so whether or not these people were actually that bad, we don't know. There's no good guys in 40k, but according to the stories of the Unification Wars, shit got real bad on Terra, and often it involved the practice of sorcery and or psychic powers. And when we say this, it's very important to note, sorcery and psychic powers are the same thing. It's just they're done slightly differently. It's like it's just like a different tradition of using those powers, but they're both calling on the warp. They're both manifesting the warp into supernatural abilities. They just do it in slightly different ways. Anyway, so during the Unification Wars, they encountered all these psychers, and the Emperor and his forces that were ultimately victorious in the Unification Wars. They had that baked in to their psyche that psychers were dangerous, very, very dangerous, extremely dangerous. So when the Great Crusade was launched and they started to go out into the universe, there was this feeling of a new beginning. They'd left behind all the darkness of Terra, all the horrors they'd witnessed, and they were embarking on a brand new vision for humanity. Okay. Now, the Emperor's no fool, obviously, and the strongest psyker that we know of. And when he created Magnus and created the Thousand Suns, there seems to have been some sort of plan, some sort of design that made them incredibly good at psychic powers and really good at wielding the energies of the warp. So
And
this
then
was
they
definitely
went a bit too far.
well. We need to do a whole episode on Magnus the Red, frankly, to cover all of that. But we have discussed a good portion of this in the past. But as they pushed deeper into the galaxy, the expeditionary fleets, they repeatedly encountered human populations that were enthralled to sorceress cults. They found not just witch doctors, they found individuals wielding that genuine warp-derived power of psychic energies. And frequently, these beings were in the service of entities of the warp. Now, at the time, they didn't know what that was, right? Which Alexis often likes to say. They called them warp Xenos.
Specifically, one book calls them that. I want to point that out. I've only seen
Right.
it in one book, but they do call them warp Xenos whenever they're spotted.
And this was a pattern that created a great deal of anxiety in the forces of the Great Crusade, in the Imperium, because people remembered the horrors of the Unification Wars. The stories were still fresh of the things that had happened during the Unification War. So finding out that this wasn't just confined to Terra, that this was now endemic to humanity, was an unwelcome surprise.
Now,
Okay.
it would have been really cool if the Emperor developed some kind of like anti-psyker fighting force that he could make en masse. That would be really, really useful for this. But, you know, maybe Amazoness themed. Like they could be really tall, really fast, wield like these gigantic blades. You know, that can't exist.
Well, and frankly, these roots go back even further than the Unification Wars, because in the Age of Strife, which is what happened prior to that, there were thousands of years where there were demon-possessed psychers, and the galaxy was plunged into a millennium of darkness, not just from the demon-possessed psychers, but they were a part of it. And the Emperor was definitely aware of this. He knew that had happened. But it's fair to say the Emperor is profoundly flawed. And in this case, In this case,
I cannot hear this heresy. The Emperor has never done anything that has ever bit him in the ass immediately.
Yeah, well, I can't keep a straight face. He was pretty, I would say, deeply ambivalent about the spread of psychers amongst humanity. I believe, in my opinion, the Emperor thought that mankind was not ready for touching the warp and using warp abilities, and they wouldn't be able to resist the more malevolent denizens of the Immaterium. So the danger, it's not theoretical. They know this is a real thing. That if you use psychic powers, shit can go bad real fucking fast.
I did mention that the Thousand Sons were already at the point of almost being corrupted prior to the Council of Nikaea. They were walking around with creatures that they had summoned from the
Tutelaries. Yes, tutelaries.
Yeah, that definitely aren't just demons.
They're totally not demons. They're just warp beings that teach us how to use our powers and influence us.
And, you know, making deals with warp entities.
Like Magnus did to try and save the Thousand Sons from their gene curse called the flesh change.
So I did have a question. Did Magnus give up his eye prior to the Council of Nikaea or after?
Prior.
Okay, so I was correct on that. I wanted to make sure I was correct on that.
By the time we meet him at the beginning of the novel A Thousand Sons, he's already given up his eye. He's already made the deal. Somewhere at the very early days of him joining his legion is when he made that deal.
The Emperor sitting there. Magnus, are you corrupted by... Oh my God, where'd your eye go? You're a primer. Why didn't it grow back? What do you mean you made a deal with some warp thing? All right, you know what? No psychic powers for anyone.
Well, it's implied that he gave up the eye, but it's never... I don't believe it's actually...
It's never directly stated, kind of like how it's never directly stated that the Emperor made a deal with the Chaos Gods.
Well, that is stated, but it's stated by, Chaos worshippers often, most of the time.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I feel like the one is a little... I feel like they're both pretty solid. Just one is a little more forcefully said. But
yeah, I also explained the different demons that we were dealing with at the time, which is Runestorm demons, demons, and bound demons.
Like Samus.
Yep. Did you know he's here?
Oh, gosh. Necroplayer gets a super chat. First of all, it's my birthday month. Happy birthday, Necroplayer. Second of all, hating psychers is the hardest thing to understand from the outside in until you read about them in novels. They are real and comfy to be around. They can be. This is what I'm trying to set up with the Age of Strife and the Unification War, is that there was very good reason to distrust psychers. There was very good reason to be like, that's a little out there. Okay. I mean, if you were going into McDonald's to buy lunch and the guy standing in front of you in line is holding a no shit grenade launcher with a bandolier of grenades around his fucking chest, you'd be like, I don't feel entirely safe right now.
Ross, not all of us are in Texas.
So that guy, the guy with the grenade launcher, that's a psyker. That's what being with a psyker is like, is they have the destructive capability, and there's very little you can do about it, frankly. So it's frightening.
To add to that, the psychers that they were dealing with were on a whole nother level. These were psychers that were untapped, uncontrolled, no restraints on them. Keep in mind, most psychers of nowadays, and by nowadays I mean current lore 40k, are severely limited in their power to control them. These psychers were not. They could do warp storms that covered entire planets. They could do earthquakes that tear continents apart. They could shoot lightning so powerful it kills thousands of Astartes. Like, these are hyperboles. Just want to put that out there. But they were capable of destroying like worlds. They were super powerful. And that's what the Astartes were fighting. They were trying to kill these things, and they were just like, these guys are really strange and really strong, and we shouldn't trust them. And then Magnus just comes along and he's like, here's a librarian.
Well, it's more than that too. But yeah, we should talk about that, the Librarius and the role of the Thousand Sons and Magnus.
Oh, I did have another question. Did the chaplains exist at this point?
No, the chaplains exist at the end of the Council of Nikaea. That's what establishes the chaplaincy, is at the very end of the Council of Nikaea. There's the Edict of Nikaea, which basically says two things. It says, one, no more psychic powers in the legions ever. And two, there will be chaplains in all the legions ever.
Which is definitely something super sneaky that was put in there by the word bearers.
I mean, there's a lot, but we're not even up to the council yet. We're just talking about like the background.
Yep.
Did you talk about who the Thousand Sons are and who Magnus is?
Magnus, Primarch, super strong, super smart, really dumb though. He's like the smartest dumbass you'll ever meet.
So the 15th Legion is the Thousand Sons. They're led by the Primarch Magnus the Red. Primarchs, I feel like if you're watching this show, okay.
Yeah, I did explain Primarchs.
Great.
They're demigods, essentially.
So Magnus had grown up on the world of Prospero, which is a world that has a lot of psychics on it for various reasons. And the scholars and mystics is basically their three things that Prospero is famous for. And a beautiful city. Tizca is considered one of the most beautiful cities in the Imperium. Was considered.
It kind of had like a what if Egypt met Mayan theme, because the pyramids weren't entirely pyramids, if that makes sense. If you look at their art, they're definitely supposed to be pyramids, though.
Well, they're triangular and not ziggurat, if that's what you're thinking. But yeah. Anyway, so Magnus had grown up amongst these learned people and was he probably had the most gifted intellect outside of the Emperor himself. Magnus was a very, very smart dude. He was a very well-read dude. He had taught himself a great deal of things. And
when you teach yourself only one thing, you get no other opinions. Which is why Magnus always believed himself was correct.
He thought he was the smartest guy in the room, in every room. Let's put it that way. Magnus was instrumental in creating and implementing the institution of the Librarius in the legions. The Librarius is a corps of psychically gifted space marines that are embedded within each legion as combat psychers and scholars and keepers of lore. Okay. And Magnus is the one who established this. So if you like librarians, you can take Magnus the Red, because he's the guy that said, hey, they shouldn't just be weapons. They should know shit. The librarians were very proven and effective during the Great Crusade. They were there was a training and development program that Magnus and a few other Primarchs had set up, and it supplemented the traditional process of becoming an Astartes, a Space Marine. Ice Veins 88 says, some thrones for the coin sack. Thank you, Ice Veins. Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you. We're bringing it. We're bringing it. Season 2, Lorebeards 40k. This is our first lore episode. What if I like Rune Priests? Donovan Eagle. Well, you like a hypocrite, first of all. But I like Rune Priests too, but they are absolutely hypocrites.
40k having hypocrites.
Yeah. Rune Priests are basically just librarians. They just follow a slightly different tradition.
For some reason, I could not get the name Rune Priest in my head. I kept thinking that was their apothecary.
So initially, the Librarius was sanctioned by the Emperor as a way to manage the emergence of Psykers amongst the legions, because it was happening. Because Psykers are emerging throughout humanity, and they continue to do so in 40k. It's sped up, over time, but only like a tiny bit. It's on a what do they call it? Tectonic scale. It's growing, but it takes a really, really long time.
Until the Psychic Awakening of 40k.
Right, which we will talk about. I would like to do an episode on the Psychic Awakening.
Hell yeah.
Because there's a lot of shit that happens, including stuff that you love, like the Sisters of Battle and St. Celestine.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, over time, the Librarians became very important to the order of battle within the legions. They were very strong on the field of battle. But this caused some problems, because there were Primarchs who supported the Librarius, but there were Primarchs who hated it. And chief among these is the grand hypocrite himself, Mortarion of the Death Guard.
Yeah,
Why is Mortarion a hypocrite, Alexis?
Oh my god. The whole, like, there's a scene from How to Train Your Dragon where he gestures to him and it's like, you just gestured to all of me. Yes. That. Mortarion is the biggest hypocrite because he is a psyker. Like, he is actually a psyker. I know a lot of the Primarchs are like, they're not necessarily psychers, but psychic things keep happening around them. But okay, he is one.
To clarify, Mortarion, prior to his ascension to demonhood, did not have psychic abilities per se. Yeah. But it's important to point out that all of the Primarchs, all of them, incorporated the warp into their being. It was part of their creation, was the warp.
Which is why it's like, because we have source books that say Leman Russ was not a psyker. And then we have the novels, which he summons a storm. And it's like, yes, he's not a psyker, but also... That's
why I wanted to be real. It's like, we're threading the needle here a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we were clear on those two things, because it's important. Mortarion was, it's fair to say, scarred by his childhood on the world of Barbarous. And it was ruled by Xenos sorcerers. It was ruled by alien overlords who used the warp to create supernatural effects that were seen as spells, but were actually just psychic abilities. Okay. And Mortarion, Ricardo Andre, all Primarchs are psychers, not all manifest in traditional form or awaken the psychic abilities. We are splitting hairs, Ricardo Andre.
Because technically all humans and anything with a soul is a psyker because it has a connection.
Oh, I would... Y'all are going some interesting places here, but I'm going to go back to what I said. I'm going to say that not all Primarchs are psychers, but all of them have the warp incorporated into their being. Because when you say so-and-so is a psyker, that's a label that carries some specific things. And I don't feel like that's appropriate for guys like Dorn, or guys like Gilliman, or guys like, there's others that are like that. Anyway, but we're on the Venn diagram, Ricardo. We're talking about very similar things. We're just maybe not using the same words. Anyway, so Mortarion of the Death Guard, he had this deep personal hatred for anything that came from the warp. Why? Because he got adopted by one of those Xenos sorcerer kings, those rulers that were aliens that also had psychic abilities, and was tortured by this being, and all of his people were tortured by it. And Mortarion just was like, screw those guys, screw all of those guys. Like that was his thing growing up. Is he felt this deep and abiding hatred for those beings. And one of the things that caused a major rift between him and the Emperor is the Emperor came and got Mortarion before Mortarion was able to destroy his own father, which he was almost, he got really close.
There is also something else I did want to point out. Mortarion's Legion didn't have a librarius.
True.
He didn't. Well, okay. Technically, he had psychers. That is, we know Typhus is a psyker.
We know Typhus was a psyker.
We do know that they had practicing psychers, but
they didn't have a librarius.
He did not have a librarius. He forbid it.
Correct.
Him and I said this earlier, but oh my god, the brain work. The World Eaters didn't have one either. Yeah, Angron.
No, they did. No, they absolutely did. No, the World Eaters had a librarius. They definitely
did until the Butcher's Nails took all their psychic powers away.
Partially, that's the fault of the librarius of the World Eaters. So, I mean, we will have to do a whole episode on the World Eaters and Angron because it's a fascinating story. But yes, there was a librarius up into the implementation of the Butcher's Nails, and after that, there was no more librarius. And there's very good reasons for that within the World Eaters. Leader 2457, thank you for the super chat. He says, on the topic of the librarius, does their symbol, the horned skull, that looks not demonic at all, does that come from Magnus? I don't know. It is a symbol that has a lot of connotations for knowledge. I mean, like Faustian bargains, obviously, but it is a symbol of something unnatural. I don't know if it came from Magnus, but it's likely, I'm going to say.
I always thought it was from the Libra Demonicon, like the actual demon book.
The librarians of 30k have that symbol though too. So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's weird.
So yeah, let's thank you, Leader 2457. So yeah, so Mortarion was the most vocal critic of the librarians. He was the one who said this is wrong, we shouldn't have it. But he was not alone, because Layman Russ had the same issue, well, similar issue. Layman Russ was like, he was disgusted by the idea of the libraries. He was disgusted primarily by Magnus. He and Magnus they didn't like each other from the moment they saw each other, and their legions had clashed multiple times prior to the Council of Nikaea, including an event that almost led to bloodshed. It was on the world of Strike, I believe. Where they damn near came to blows because Magnus wanted to save a bunch of books and stuff from being destroyed, and Russ was like, we've been ordered to raise this planet, get the hell out of my way. But so for Russ, he didn't like the librarians because it came from Magnus. It was personal. Russ was like, I'm not even going to consider if this is a good idea because it comes from that asshole, the guy I don't like, Magnus. So Magnus so Magnus is on one side, and Russ and Mortarion were kind of on the other. It's a good way to think of it. Also, Layman Russ also felt that using psychic abilities to win, and this is super hypocritical, because he uses rune priests who use psychic powers. They just call it something else, and like have a piece of paper.
World spirit.
They have a piece of paper that says, trust me, bro, it's not actually psychic power, which it totally is. But Russ felt that this was like winning through sleight of hand. This was winning through cheating, was to use psychic abilities. Librarians. So Russ was the one pushing the hardest, whereas Mortarion was the one that hated them the most, if that makes sense. Now, Dorn and Korax straight up refused to field forces alongside Psychers. They were just like, no, thank you. That's crazy. Why would we do that?
It's so fun. I love Dorn. Uh, Dorn actually kept his librarius in the phalanx and kept them locked up. And anytime somebody got psychic abilities, they were thrown into the square hole.
It goes in the square hole. Oh, that poor lady. So this was causing serious problems in the Great Crusade, because if Dorn and Corax are not going to go to battle next to librarians or next to people who use psychic abilities, that means they're not going to go to battle alongside the Thousand Sons. The Thousand Sons Legion, Magnus's legion, was almost entirely psychers. They were almost entirely on the same level as librarians. They had psychic dreadnoughts. Okay.
Yep.
Had,
their sergeants were psychers.
Their sergeants were
psychers.
Well, the robots were controlled by psychers. Yeah. Similar, but yeah, and the first company were all like well-established people who could use the abilities of the Prosperine cults. Okay, so, that's what they were called.
Sorry, the 40k robots they have are just psychers.
Right, but that's different.
Yeah,
that's not the 30K.
At the same time.
Yeah. And I gotta let me be real with you for a minute, Alexis. Magnus the Red, sitting there in Prospero, knows all this shit is going on, right? And how does he structure his legion? How does he put these things in place? Well, if you know much about Tisca or Prospero or the Thousand Sons, you know that they're organized into groups called cults. The cults, and their first company is called the Scarab Occult, like occult practices. Yep. And their temples, their pyramids were called temples of these particular cults. I'm going to say, Magnus, my boy, if you don't want people to look at you like you're a weirdo, maybe don't go around using all this terminology that goes directly against the imperial truth. Because the emperor is out there trying to say there's no gods, there's no temples, it's all secular. And Magnus is like, hey, check it out, we're called cults.
In all fairness, the emperor also, during the time of like saying there are no gods, was like, these are my angels of death.
Well, yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm just saying it's to me, if you look at Prospero, you look at how Magnus was naming things, my eyebrows were like way up here. I was like, bro, bro, what are you doing?
But it's so funny to think of Magnus as the guy that he's just a Redditor. He thinks he's correct.
He thinks he's the smartest man in the room.
Yep.
So this is
Kovu fell asleep in my arms.
Oh, that's cute, kitty. I'm sorry, Alexis. I know I've been yakking, but I wanted to give you a rest
since
you've been yakking for like an hour.
You go right ahead.
Kovu's such a cutie.
Also, I can't move my arms, so I can't read my notes anymore.
So now we have everything leading up to the Council of Nikaea. Why is the Council of Nikaea being called? Because forces in the Great Crusade are refusing to go to war next to Psychers, and this is a problem. And the Emperor's like, okay, I got to deal with this. So he calls a council on the world of Nikaea in this amphitheater, this ancient place that could seat tens of thousands of people.
And the Emperor... It is one of his best achievements. He built this place.
Did he? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was use of Blackstone, but we don't know if it was Nokolith. Probably wasn't. But it would be really cool if it was, because that would make sense with the Psychers to try to dampen their powers.
The people present at the council it's a pretty long list, but it starts with the Emperor. The two most important people you need to be aware of is the Emperor and Magnus were both there. Magnus was physically there. The Emperor was physically there. Sean DeWolf. Super chat. I'm upset that in the lead up to the council, there's not some world named Alexandria, which was the nexus point of the debate before the council starts. That's because, okay, so he's what Sean DeWolf is talking about here is that the Council of Nikaea in our world, in our history, happened. Is it in Alexandria or after Alexandria was burned? I forget, but it's related to the city of Alexandria, so it's pretty awesome. And Sean DeWolf is saying, I'm talking about the other council. Yeah, the Nikaea with the C. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I think it might be Nicaea instead of Nikaea.
It's Nicaea, yeah.
It's Nicaea.
Also, this is one of the things that I always thought of. Do you think the Emperor actually showed up physically? It says he showed up, but do you think that's his physical form?
Everything we know says he was there physically.
Yeah.
But again, he's the strongest psyker in the universe, or the strongest psyker that we know of in the setting. So, I mean, I'm going to go, if you ask me, was he there physically? I'm going to say yes, he was, because that's what the records say.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he was not actually there, but just projecting himself? Sure, I guess. But I don't think so.
I always still love the theory of the Emperor actually having an avatar that acts as him.
It would be surprising if he didn't have some doubles. You know, I don't know.
Every time somebody goes and talks to the Emperor, he's an old man. Like when Lion talked to him, when Gilliman talked to him, he saw an old man.
Right. Which, I mean, he is old. He's been around for a really goddamn long time. So that's not inaccurate either. Okay, so we have the Emperor was there, the Council of Terra, not all of the council, but several members of the council were there. Magnus was there, Laban Russ was there, Mortarion was there, Dorn was there, Corax was there, Lorgar was there. So you have 6 Primarchs. Outside of Alinor, I think this is the greatest gathering of Primarchs during the Crusade.
I also mentioned that this is the last gathering before the heresy.
And you can argue, some people argue that this is actually part of the heresy, that it starts here, which is interesting.
I would actually agree with that, because it's very clear that this was directly against Magnus.
Well, and there's a lot of theories about that too, but yes, it definitely seems very pointed at this point. Just to finish it off, there were Sisters of Silence there. There was representatives of almost all the legions were there, especially the Librarius members. So even though like the Khan was not present, there were Stormseers from the White Scars at the council. Okay. And the Mechanicum was also there, mostly as observers, but they were also there. And then there's a novel about all this happening, which is called Prospero Burns. I think it's the Dan Abnett one of the two. Yeah, I think it's Prospero Burns. And a lot of weird shit happens in that book around the Council of Nikaea. Like there's a demon in the shape of another person and a bunch of other weird stuff. I'm not going to focus on that right now.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot. And it's largely irrelevant. So some people did attend anonymously, concealed by what are called falsehoods, quote unquote. It's a chameleonic cloak made of technological artifice that hides your identity.
Also, we have to mention Malgador the Sigilite was there.
Yes.
Yeah, and we talked about the demon that somehow got in there.
I don't want to dwell on that. It's weird.
You know, the demon that slipped past the Emperor
and
Malgador,
the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence,
the Sisters of Silence,
all the Librarians. That just makes no fucking sense to me. So I'm like,
the only thing
I don't think so.
That has to be the Changeling. Like
maybe
if they just said that was the Changeling, I'd be like, you know what? Okay, that's fine.
You know me. I'm a huge fan of Dan Abnett. I think he's written some outstanding novels and a lot of great comics. Prospero Burns is my least favorite Dan Abnett novel. I really don't like it. All right, so we now know who's there at the council. The Blood Ravens actually have some writings about this. The Blood Ravens, they call it the hearing of the thousands, and that kitty is so asleep. The Blood Ravens also say that knowledge is power, use it well. That's a line from this conclave. That's where that comes from. So just fun fact about the Blood Ravens. They steal things, including mottos.
Yeah. You know what, Professor Sharp? You're kind of correct.
Abnett does have his odd misses, yeah.
He's
generally very good.
He has to write a 9 out of 10 every now and then.
Yeah. Did they steal it, says Devin Urbana? I mean, maybe. They might also be descendants of the Thousand Sons gene seed. So
it also makes sense because they're the ones that are now training all the new librarians.
Yes, which it's strongly implied that the Blood Ravens are from loyalist houses that gene seed. Whether or not that's true, it's speculation at this point, but it's implied, deeply implied. All right, so on the one side of the debate, you've got the anti-Psyker coalition. All right, Sisters of Silence, Layman Russ, Mortarion. Their argument is built on evidence from across the Crusade, the terrible suffering inflicted by Xenos or sorcerers who were enslaved to warp creatures, mutants who'd surrendered their humanity to the corruption of the warp, cults that had turned their psychic gifts to very dark purposes, all that shit. And of course, they pointed to the Age of Strife and the Unification Wars and all the crazy ass damage that Psykers did during that era. They did not dispute that Psykers could be useful because navigators and astropaths are essential to the operation of the Imperium. Without them, there is no Imperium. So they're like, yes, we have to have these guys. We just think they suck.
Until they discover the Crew Canaries.
But their main argument was that specifically Psykers in combat and the pursuit of learning more about sorcery and psychic powers, that was an unacceptable risk to the stability of the Imperium. And, I mean, they make some solid points. It's not like they didn't have a leg to stand on. They actually had some interesting points to discuss.
So I have a question for you, Ross.
Yeah, sorry. I know I've finally wound down.
By all means, go off. Because this is a topic that you absolutely love. We were talking about this like a few weeks ago, and you're just like, I can't wait for this. But do you think that more Psykers fell to Horus than didn't? Keep in mind, these Psykers didn't have too many limiters.
Yeah, I mean, Horus certainly didn't have any problem using people's psychic abilities, but he did employ Mortarion, who definitely didn't like that. So yeah. I'm going to say probably he did have more Psykers on his side. They
also had the Legion Esoteris, which were demon summoners.
Straight up. Yeah. Absolutely. That's true. Esoteris, the Esoteris, though, were on both sides. There were loyal Esoteris, and there were...
Yeah, which is weird.
Yeah. It was a strange time.
Let me just summon this demon to protect us. I'm sorry, what?
Listen.
So this one's a warp Xenos. That one's a demon.
Listen, when half the galaxy is at war with the other half of the galaxy, you get a little desperate. Yeah, and especially Esoterists were very good at dealing with, guess what? Demons.
Demons, yeah.
Just like all librarians are. So they were like, okay.
Also, they did technically need them to bind the demons.
So, I just want to be clear. There were Esoterists on both sides, and there were librarians on both sides.
Yep.
So, and an Esoterist is basically just a librarian who has a particular interest in demons and summoning things. So the other side was Magnus the Red, and he's a hell of an orator. He gave a ridiculously good speech at this event. There's a reason why it's called the Trial of Magnus the Red, because he was the face of the Librarius. He was the face of using psychic abilities. And he had a lot of charisma, and he had a hell of a lot of intellectual force. This guy, again, really good speech maker. His core argument was that knowledge was not evil. That there's no such thing as evil knowledge. It's just about how you use it. It's and that the pursuit of knowledge is never wrong as long as the seeker remains the master of what they learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry. Just look into the dark portal, and if things start telling you things are true, you just believe them because they don't lie to you.
Magnus, because he believed he was the smartest man in the room, he insisted that the Thousand Sons had mastered their knowledge.
Yep.
And that there was no labyrinth of lore that they could not navigate in the service of mankind. Right? I mean, you can see this coming a mile away. You really can.
The worst part, Ross, is that he was teaching this to the Librarius, which he was then sending to other chapters.
Yes, to spread that knowledge.
Legions.
And that's that idea was spread, yes.
Which is terrible. Like, holy crap, he is sending the most dangerous knowledge in 40k across the galaxy. Because me and you both know that demons are weird in 40k. The knowledge of demons actually spreads more demons, which is why the knowledge of demons is suppressed as much as it is in 40k. But one of the big things about it is they didn't have like, hey, you can't do this. Like, they didn't have the teachings of if something starts talking to you, don't start listening. They didn't have the protections. They didn't have as much discipline as they do in 40k versus 30k.
And why
And
was that, Alexis?
well, because they weren't full. So in
Because the
40k,
Emperor wanted to keep them ignorant.
yes, because ignorance is a shield against demons, which is a very hilarious thing. And the Emperor was starving the demons, which is crazy to think about. That mass atheism was actually doing something in Warhammer, which is really cool.
Hey, let's hear for atheism. Woo!
Woo! But anyway, which is weird because they went from atheism to the power of believing in yourself and became all like shonen protagonists.
Believe it.
Yeah. And Kovu, can you please get your claws out of my wrist?
I think he wants you to pay attention to him.
Oh, no, he wants to take a napo. But I find it super funny. And it's why I believe that most librarians in 30k were actually corrupted beyond belief, is because they willingly gave their minds over to the warp to gain more power. And then being like, oh, we've mastered it. It's like,
yeah, so Ice Fiends has a comment here. He says arrogance much, talking about Magnus's assertion that they had mastered the warp.
mhm.
Yeah, it is arrogance, but I would say the best term is hubris. It
Yeah.
was arrogance to a point of disaster, and that is exactly what happened to Magnus. Anyway, let me just rapidly go through Magnus's position here. Magnus said that we shouldn't ban, that the Emperor should not ban psychic abilities. Instead, Magnus says you need to invest in further research so that those powers can be more fully harnessed for the betterment of humanity.
He was on the stock trade for
I
psychic
mean,
powers, and it just crashed.
Now, Magnus was not alone. There were other Primarchs who were sympathetic. The Khan was very sympathetic. He argued that it was short-sighted to dismiss something as natural as the warp, because to them it was natural, right?
Mhm.
And he was cautious, but he was backing up Magnus. Let's put it that way.
And Sanguinius.
Sanguinius, Fulgrim, and Lorgar, all for their own reasons, broadly favored the use of psychers, though their motivations were very different. By this point, by the way, it's definitely Lorgar was corrupted, and the word bearers were corrupted. So
Did Fulgrim have the lair
lair
blade
blade?
at this point?
I'd have to check the timeline.
Because I think this is just before he gets. It's either just before or he has the lair blade. No, he has the lair blade, and then jumps to Horus, who's bombarding a planet.
Okay, so
he doesn't.
The cleansing of lair is a year before the Council of Nikaea. So yes,
Yeah.
he was already had the lair blade. So
he did.
Yes. So Fulgrim is already corrupted, and Lorgar's already corrupted by this point.
You're telling me there's not only one demon there, there's two.
Fulgrim wasn't there. Fulgrim was not present.
Okay, Fulgrim wasn't present. He just voiced.
No, this is just his opinion. I want to be clear. Like they're backing up Magnus in that they are part of the pro psyker side.
So Fulgrim put a thumbs up in the group chat.
He put a thumbs up in the group chat. Exactly.
Angron wrote that he couldn't figure out the phone.
And for our good friend Nestor Vitumbra, Conrad Kurz was also in favor. And Alfarius was also in favor of using psychers. Oops.
Yep.
Double
Sorry,
click.
I clicked.
Double click. We both were like, pouncing on it. Okay. Necro player. Thank you for your super chat. He says, I mentioned this earlier, but for you, Ross, Magnus isn't wrong from his perspective, but it's easy to actually be wrong when you are uneducated. I mean, he is factually wrong. They did not master the warp. They were in fact mastered by the warp. But I see your point. I see where you're coming from, where you're saying like he's from his perspective, he is correct. And yes, from the things that Magnus knew, which again, he thought he knew everything. Yeah, it is. This whole event is a very tragic thing. So I'm glad you appreciate how tragic it is and how both sides have some interesting things to say, because they do. They both have very valid points. Angron, Professor Chap says Angron was typing his response so angrily that he ended up breaking his phone.
I imagine Angron in group chats has to use the Sauron to message for him.
So Alexis, where do you think Horus weighed in?
God, I want to say he was in favor of using psychers.
Horus stayed out of it. He's like,
yeah, but
he's like,
okay,
you could pass me up with that. I have no comment.
I thought you meant like, where does he stand? Like, does he stand with or against?
That's what I mean. His position was, I want no part of it.
Well, I always view that as that's his like political stance.
Yeah, it was political. He didn't want either side to be upset with him over this.
Oh yeah, but in his mind, he was probably like, no, don't get rid of psychers. That's dumb. I need those.
I mean, I think in his heart of hearts, he probably was very similar to the Khan, where he's like, yeah, we should use them, but we should be cautious.
Yeah.
Donovan Eagle, thank you for the super chat. To be fair to Russ, he was okay with the Khan psychers and his position on him. In the book Wolfsbane, he says, so long as it's limited, he's okay. Right. But Russ's opinion changed when he discovered how much of this was due to Magnus's influence. And once he realized it was Magnus, he's like, no, fuck that guy. Fuck everything he's ever touched. The Librarius is bad. And don't look at my wolf priests. They're totally not psychers. Here's also a piece of paper that says, trust me, bro, they're not psychers. Also,
keep in mind that Lehman Russ is also a massive hypocrite.
Yes. That is exactly my point. So Russ was opposed to the Librarius because it was Magnus's thing. And until he found out about that, he was like, it's probably fine. And then he's like, oh shit, fuck that. So where was I? Okay. Then we get the third option. So we have the pro-psyker side, we have the anti-psyker side, and then we get the third option. The third option is called the Librarius Compromise. Have you heard about this, Alexis?
You know what? No. It has. Oh, okay. See you later, Kofu.
He's done.
Yeah, I guess he was just like, you know what? Mom doesn't know about this. I'm leaving.
You were going to say something?
Oh no, that was it.
Okay. So this is a pivotal moment in the debate, because a delegation of Space Marine librarians, they go before the dais where the Emperor is seated as the ultimate authority in this council. The Emperor acknowledges them. Everybody goes quiet. And these were some of the greatest librarians in the legions, some of the strongest, some of the most well experienced, and they proposed a distinction. They proposed that a psyker was like an athlete. He was gifted with talent, and that talent must be nurtured. It's not innately evil to have this talent, but like any tool, it's capable of being used for good or for ill. They said that is psychers. Sorcery is this whole other thing. And sorcery is knowledge that you have to bargain with beings in the warp to get. It's knowledge you have to actively seek out from Xenos cultures or lost human civilizations. No one can really be sure whether sorcery is okay, but psychics are fine. Psychic powers are okay. They're fine. Trust us.
Now, I do want to point this out. There are things like normal people reading Chaos Corrupted tomes that have a psychic link to the warp itself and use the person as a vessel to go back and forth. So if you see somebody that is not a psyker using psychic powers while holding a corrupted tome, it's not them using the psychic powers. It's technically something else using them as a conduit for it.
Well, that's a sweeping statement. I don't fully agree with that. Let's put it that way. But this is kind of like making a distinction without a difference.
Yeah.
Both sorcery and psychic powers come from the warp. They are both expressed in very, very similar ways. It's literally a distinction with no difference to say that psychics and sorcery are different things. They're really not. Games Workshop has said as much. They're really not. They're all just psychic abilities. But this is an elegant solution, though, because psychers are important for required for the Imperium to run. That means the Imperium can strictly educate, can sanction these psychers for the purposes of serving mankind. Whereas sorcery, we can outlaw that. We can say that is the bad stuff, and the heresy against the imperial truth. It's a compromise that appealed to both sides for different reasons. Obviously, Magnus is like, well, they're the same thing, so fuck it. And the people who wanted to use librarians, the pro-librarian side was happy because they're like, hey, we can keep using librarians. The anti-librarian side was like, well, at least they're, we already know we have to use psychers for some things. This is just maybe expanding that a little bit, right? And meanwhile, Layman Russ is in there going, well, fuck Magnus. He's clearly a sorcerer. He's not a psyker. So Russ was all in favor of this. But beneath all of this debate, though, that cat. Oh no, he knocked over a box. He definitely wants your attention.
Yep.
He is causing chaos to get you to go over and deal with him.
I'll pick up the box after the show.
It's a cat trap.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got a super chat from Necroplayer. When were the Grey Knights as an idea made? At the end of the heresy. At the end of the heresy.
So, yes, when they were started.
We will do a whole episode on the Grey Knights, I promise you. And there's this guy called Janus. There's this guy called Janus who is a loyalist Thousand Son, who is the first Grand Master of the Grey Knights, and he gets installed at the end of the heresy.
But then there's also the Knights Errant.
They're a different thing. They're a different thing. They are the Knights Errant are more proto-Inquisition than they are proto-Grey Knights, although they are it's a shared ancestor between the two forces. The two groups.
Which, again, Malkador wanted to make an investigation group of all of them because he didn't trust them at all.
Well, that's what became the Inquisition.
Yeah, that's also why he had the Assassinorum made. Well,
the Assassinorum was around before. It wasn't called the Assassinorum then, but it was called. But he was in charge of the assassins prior to and during the Great Crusade. That was a thing that happened before all this happened. Anyway,
I want to know which one of them was more ruthless, Malkador or the Emperor.
That's a very interesting question. Because Malkador is a ruthless motherfucker.
Yeah. Because he will stand by and let the Emperor do what the Emperor needs to do, but at the same time, he will flat out betray the Emperor to kill a character that he doesn't like.
Speaking of killing people you don't like, we need to talk about how all this debate, all this discussion about the Psychers and the Legions, that was window dressing. The real thing, the real debate, the real thing of discussion was the trial of Magnus the Red. This was an accusation that, and evidence was presented that Magnus had been doing sorcery. Okay, that he'd been warned by the Emperor to stop messing around with denizens of the warp, and had still continued to do it. And the Emperor wasn't happy about this because obviously the Imperial Truth, and the Emperor knew that there was greater beings in the warp that should not be contacted, should not have deals done with them, and the Emperor was not happy about this.
What? How could the Emperor not be happy with
it?
The
theory goes, and I want to be clear, this is a theory, but the theory goes that the Emperor had entrusted Magnus with the secrets of the warp and the existence of entities that would one day be called the Chaos Gods in secret. Like, it was a confidence. It was like, I'm not going to tell anyone else. I'm going to tell you because you're my special child. And the theory is that he was grooming Magnus to one day take his to take his place on the Golden Throne and do the Astronomicon while the Emperor handled other things. So this was a confrontation between father and son over something that the father had revealed in a very in a confidential way, which, you know, the Emperor was pretty pissed to be like, oh, okay, well, now it's all in front of everybody. Okay, great. Now I look like an asshole. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's the father-son bit, there's the trial bit, there's the actual, like, are psychers good or bad? It's a lot. The Castle of Nikaea is a big deal.
Thank the gods that Lion didn't show up. What do you mean chaos isn't real? Dude, I've been fighting it for, like, hundreds of years. I even got these little guys with me. They're chaos.
Well, the Lion was one of the most trusted, period, but even he didn't know about chaos.
Well...
No, I mean, flat out, like the reveal of chaos being a thing happens when the Interrex are encountered by the Luna Wolves, or Sons of Horus, I guess, actually would be Sons of Horus. So it is not yet full knowledge, and I don't believe the Lion ever really. Maybe the Lion was told. I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't think so. Everything we know says that the chaos was still a secret until the Interrex.
So Lion grew up on a planet like completely corrupted by
right,
chaos.
like he would recognize it.
Yeah,
he would recognize it.
He also knows about the Watchers of the Dark, which are arguably maybe demons sometimes.
I would say the Lion is familiar with the outline, but he doesn't have the facts at this point.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. I think that would be my stance on it. But you made a good point. You made a very good point.
If anything, like out of any of the Primarchs, if the Emperor told the Lion, he'd just be like, okay, do you want me to go kill him?
Lion was very much that guy. But let's talk about how the trial of Magnus ends, because it ends in a fairly severe judgment of Magnus by the Emperor. First of all, the first thing you need to know is that the compromise, the Emperor's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's stupid. And he said he created what's called the Decree Absolute, which is part of the Edict of Nikaea. And the Edict of Nikaea is a really big deal, so that's why I'm kind of putting it in all caps. But underneath that is the Decree Absolute. What does the Decree Absolute say, Alexis?
1 second, I'm checking Twitch to see if we missed any super chats while you go over that. Sorry.
Okay, no, it's no biggie.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss any super chats at all.
I'll go through it. No big deal.
Yeah.
Navigators and astropaths are exempt. We have to have them. All librarious departments are forthwith closed. Existing librarians are forbidden from using their abilities and are you're just a normal battle brother now. Have fun with that. Any combat psychers used throughout the rest of the Imperial military, banned. Sorcery. Go ahead.
It's really weird for Imperial armies to lose all their psychers, because what the hell did they do with all those Raven psychers? And the Primaris psychers? Now keep in mind, not Primaris Space Marines, Primaris psychers. They were completely different.
You shouldn't call them that because that's a 40k thing. But yeah, just psychers within the Auxilia or within the Imperial Army.
Yeah, it was very weird because I don't think they got any word of it or anybody actually wrote about them, so we have no idea if they followed it.
Furthermore, sorcery, as defined by the Council of Nikaea, which is to say dealing with warp entities and unrestricted use of psychic powers, is banned and is an unforgivable offense against humanity. And lastly, Magnus personally was ordered to cease all practice of sorcery, cease the pursuit of knowledge related to psychic abilities and the warp. Period. End of sentence. And the full text has this really dire warning at the end where the Emperor is like, woe betide he who ignores my warning or breaks faith with me. He shall be my enemy, and I will visit such destruction upon him and his followers that until the end of all things he shall rue the day he turned from my light. The Emperor wanted everyone to be like, there is no question, this is what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first part. That's the decree absolute. Now, remember, the Edict of Nikaea includes a couple of things. The first part we've covered. The second part, this is the part that Alexis was asking about, the Chaplain Edict. The less famous but equally consequential ruling from the Council of Nikaea is called the Chaplain Edict, and the Emperor required that all Space Marine legions establish a new specialist rank called Chaplain. This was, of course, drawn from the practices of the already existing Wordbearers Legion, who already had chaplains. Now, chaplains were not, in the Wordbearers, obviously, they have a far more religious role, right? But from this edict, from the Edict of Nikaea, the role of the chaplain is to uphold the ideals of the imperial truth, maintain the dedication and morale of their battle brothers, and ensure the purity of each legion's fidelity to the Emperor's commands. That's what they're for.
They're cheerleaders. Angry cheerleaders. So normal cheerleaders.
The purpose of this was to replace librarians with guardians of ideological discipline within the legions. Was to remember, as far as we know, the Emperor's plan was to starve the Chaos Gods out by keeping everyone ignorant and keeping everyone atheist. And the chaplains were there. But I know that the word chaplain has a religious thing to it, but they were there to ensure that religion did not take root. That cults and worship of the Chaos Gods did not happen. That was one of the things they were meant to do. So what's really funny here in the aftermath, a whole bunch of stuff happens. We can talk about the war in the Webway. We can talk about how the burning of Prospero, which is a whole episode. There's a lot that happens, and we just don't have the time to get into it. But suffice it to say, this is a trigger event that causes a lot of things to occur down the line. And for you, if you take nothing else away from this episode, here's the thing you should take away. That decree absolute from the Emperor, the strongest worded order the Emperor ever gave to the legions, they ignored it.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them.
So first of all, straight up, the Khan and Russ both were like, no, thank you. We're just going to keep using our guys. We're not sorcerers. We're psychers. That's different.
Well, they said that we can't use psychers and sorceries. Well, what do you have?
They didn't mean us. They didn't mean us. What do you have?
Storm seers. Oh, completely different. Although the Dark Angels were just like, we'll follow it. We're going to keep our librarians.
No, that's if they kept the librarians, they didn't follow the order. The Ultramarines followed it.
So the Dark Angels violated the edict and used the librarians to battle demons.
Yes. So
here's almost immediately after.
This is the thing. This is the thing. Whenever a legion started to fight demons after the edict, they ignored it. Gilliman, arguably the most loyal son, during the Battle of Calth, during the Shadow Crusade, I should say, during the Shadow Crusade, he's like, no, we need librarians. Reinstate the librarians. Let's do it because the demons are kicking our ass. Yeah. My point was that some people just ignored it from the get-go, and some people later ignored it when it was necessary, like the Dark Angels is one too. Sean DeWolf, keep everyone ignorant. Religion bad. Also establish chaplaincy, and everyone who disobeys will be out of my light, which is totally not calling myself a god. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Hypocrisy is huge, is my point
now,
in this.
Listen, my angels of death. Be blessed in my golden light, for I am not a god.
Let us discuss hypocrisy for a few minutes.
And one of the best things is when they, I said this earlier, I actually said this a few times, but I love this idea, is that when they were getting to the planet, they couldn't get through the storm around the planet, and the Emperor had to send up a psychic beacon to lure them all there. Which is just the best hypocrisy ever.
There was a question here I wanted to address. Hannah says, was this after Monarchia? Yeah, it's about 6 years.
Malarkey.
6 or 7 years after Monarchia. All right, so monarchy is for people who don't know, monarchy is a very important moment in the history of the word bearers, and it marks the moment when the word bearers legion decided to not follow the emperor anymore and decided to go follow chaos. So that's what that's up. 6 or 7, about 7 years. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're doing there, buddy. I got you. Very funny. Very funny. Donovan Eagle says, mentioned Emperor implied Space Wolves and White Scar Psychers are okay. No, they just ignored the order. The thing that you need to know about this is the Emperor's most strongly worded command to the legions is the one they ignored, and continually they ignored it for the rest of their existence. It's the only command I know of that the Emperor gave that the legions were just like, no, we're not doing that.
Also, weirdly enough, you would think that the Black Templar would follow this. They conveniently do follow it, but they never acknowledge that it's the Emperor's order, the Emperor's decree. It's very weird.
That's an interesting. Is there hatred of Psychers rooted in the Council of Nikaea? That's an interesting question, because Dorn was not a fan, to be clear.
Yeah.
So is it Dorn? Is it the Council? We should do a whole episode on the Black Templars and dig into that. But I have got to get back to this, or we're not going to finish. So hypocrisies. You want to talk about hypocrisy, Alexis?
Yeah, I do like them.
So let's start with Layman Russ. Let's start with the Rune Priests. One of the most debated aspects of the Council of Nikaea is the glaring hypocrisy of the anti-Psyker side. Layman Russ railed against the use of the librarians, pushed hardest for the ban, and yet his Space Wolf Rune Priests, their own Legion psychic warriors, they were never compelled to stand down. Russ justified this by saying the Rune Priests drew their power from Fenris, not from the warp. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They get their power from my home worlds, which is a distinction that is semantic at best.
Hey, if I learned one thing about the Emperor, he is very much a rules as written guy.
Right. This is also good.
And Layman Russ is a rules. Well, he occasionally listens to the rules kind of guy, and he got him on that. And the Emperor's like, damn, outsmarted by a dumbass.
This is also partly the justification for the Stormseers, but largely it was just the Khan was like, I'm not doing that. That's stupid.
In all fairness, they also forgot to write about the Khan for the last 15 books of the Heresy.
That's true. So Russ did acknowledge that it is a measure of hypocrisy, but he maintained that the threat of the Thousand Suns and the reckless, undisciplined warp engagement is the real problem. It's Magnus is the real problem. I'm going to break the rules anyway because somebody has to watch over that asshole. That was his thinking. And Russ, well, he believed that his Rune Priests, they operated with far more restraint, far more finesse, far more caution than the Thousand Suns ever did. Which, I mean, to a point, he is justified. They did not encounter the same problems that the Thousand Suns did. So maybe he's not wrong about that.
But I will point this out, Ross. We have never, in the history of ever, had a oh my god, a psychic backlash from either the Wolf Priests or the Stormseers.
You're wrong about that.
They've never written that there was a psychic backlash from any of them.
It happened.
Now,
I will assure you.
Obviously, it happened.
I will assure you it happened.
It's one of the things that I absolutely cannot stand is one, force fields not activating. My big trigger on that is force fields not being used in 40k. It annoys the piss out of me. But the second is that psychers, for some reason, in almost all of the books, just freely use their psychic powers and never once have to think about the fact that they can, at any point, explode from using them.
Well,
but I think that's more of the writer's interpretation of psychic powers versus how psychic powers actually work in the universe.
We have had discussions on this. I mean, we have a whole episode on the power faith for one. Go check that out. But it largely, it's not. It is somewhat about how you use your powers, but it is also about the instruction on how to access and wield those powers. So the fact that
phenomena. That's what I was. Sorry. Continue.
Phenomena. Phenomena. Yeah. So it's quite possible that psychers can quote unquote go all out without going all out because they're going up to an imposed limit. That's how I always saw it. Is that they were taught it's safe to go to this number but no higher, and that's what they do. But I don't know. We got a couple super chats here. One from Donovan Eagle says, Battle of the Fang says the Emperor created rude priests. That is not correct. The lore tells us that the rune priests were from Fenrisian culture. I mean, arguably the Emperor may have set that up, quite possibly. It seems like the kind of thing someone would say who is a real big fan of the Emperor. Rather than necessarily what happened. But you know what? It's possible. I'll put it there. I don't think that's technically accurate, but I think it's definitely possible. Necroplayer says, did we ever get the Alpha Legion's opinion on this? The Alpha Legion was part of the pro psyker side. They and Kurz, they and the Night Lords were both like, yes, we'd like to use psychers, please. Thank you. And Donovan Eagle says, Battle of the Fang also has a rune priest go through the perils of the warp. Hey, Alexis.
Oh, cool.
That's for you. Read Battle of the Fang. Thank you, Donovan Eagle. I did not know that. I appreciate that. There's so many books from the Black Library. I'm getting through Falcadia right now. We're doing our best. But I don't have them all memorized. So thank you. I do appreciate you. You guys are great.
In the Fear to Tread novel, it flat out states that the Space Wolves just ignored the decree of Nikaea.
They didn't think it applied to them, Alexis.
Yeah.
Unlike the White Scars who were like, yeah, we're just not going to follow that. The Russ and his boys, they were like, yeah, that's for other people. That's not for us. They don't mean us. So thank you, Donovan Eagle. Do appreciate you.
And in Wolfbane, they do draw their powers. It's stated that they draw their powers from Fenris. In the Wrath of Magnus book, it's stated that Fenris has a world spirit that is corrupted. So it's still warp powers.
Here's my take on that. They certainly believe that they are drawing power from Fenris.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they think. I am 100% agreement that is exactly what they think. But I'm here to tell you with some authority that power ultimately at the end of the day, it comes from the warp. So Leader 2457's got a big old super chat here. Steel Chair super chat. He says, I also find it funny that the Storm Seers and the Rune Priests ignored it. By their definition, the most sorcerer-like with their talking with spirits thing. Yes, Storm Seers and Rune Priests have all the trappings of sorcery. It's the same thing, you guys. It's just a different point of view.
I also hate the idea that they're called Rune Priests. Like it's something that bugs me just a little bit because they could have called them something actually from like Scandinavian mythologies or the Viking
like a weird maker.
They could have called them that, or they could have called them Norns. Norns would have been perfect. Norns use magic. It would make perfect sense. Runes, they're not really magic. It's just a language.
Listen, I didn't come up with it. All right, so where was I?
Casters. Casters would have also worked. Like if you said rune caster or bone caster, that would have been much better.
So Mortarion is also a major hypocrite in all this because he positioned himself as the most vehemently anti-psyker. Like he hated the power of the warp. And this is driven by his deep personal revulsion for that power because it was used to torment him and the people of his world. Barbarous. However, he's a hypocrite because within his own lifetime, within a few years of this event, actually, he willingly surrendered himself to the warp. He gave himself to the power of Nurgle, became a demon prince. His position came from a place of hatred rather than principled concern. And he was quick to abandon that position, that he was quick to abandon that principle when it came down to him, his own selfish needs.
Mm-hmm.
So Mortarion is a huge hypocrite in all this, true. Then, of course, there's the irony of Lorgar's support, because the Werebears who voted in favor of using Psykers, they didn't do so because of any high-minded philosophical position. They did this because they were already secretly devoted to the Chaos Gods.
Yep.
They understood that sorceress knowledge would accelerate the Imperium's vulnerability to chaos. They knew that to replace the librarians and with things that they had created, the chaplains, would A, make the legions easier to beat with demons, and B, make the legions more likely to worship chaos. Shocking.
Yeah, who would have guessed?
This was a decree meant to protect the Imperium, and all it did was weaken it. And we got a super chat from Donovan Eagle, and the Space Wolves call them Godi in Fenrisian, an actual Viking age title similar to a druid. Oh, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, the Fenrisian words are pretty interesting. They call themselves the Vilka Fenrika. They don't call themselves the Space Wolves. They call themselves the Wolves of Fenris.
The Vulcan Fenrika is
Vilka
so...
Fenrika.
They're just calling themselves wolves.
Yes, the Wolves of Wolf. Yes, the Wolves of the Great Wolf is another way to think of it.
The guild is interesting. Druid predates Vikings by a few hundred years, but they did have similarities because Druids did still exist, but they're more part of cult and Gaelic cultures than they were of Viking culture. Vikings had the Norns.
Yeah, I'm not
as...
They
had healing women, and they had things that were very similar to Druids. In fact, they actually had Druids as well, but Druids is more associated with Celtic culture. But that's because Vikings kidnapped so many people from Ireland that they preserved their culture here in Iceland. There's actually a really funny historical thing here in Iceland where because Iceland Vikings, which there weren't many, I'm just going to put this out there, but they raided Ireland so much that when Ireland was getting absolutely forcibly Christianized, let's say, so we can stay on YouTube, there were so many people getting kidnapped from Ireland, or stolen, put into slavery, that in Iceland, every single person of red hair is related to somebody in Ireland directly, and they partially preserve their culture, which is super funny.
You know, Alexis, they were not slaves, they were thralls. That's different.
It's slavery with a different name.
That's the psychic ability thing. It's the same thing, just with a different name. That's my point. I was comparing it. I was comparing a direct real world thing. And I'm not a history major or anything, but my understanding is that the Vikings, the Viking age you're thinking of is around the 9th century, and the Druids are somewhere around the 6th century, is my understanding.
6 to 9 is Druids and like Celts. Although then again, Celt, much like the word Viking, is a catch-all term now, which is annoying because the Celts were one specific tribe of Germanic tribes, but now Celt is being used as a catch-all term for all Germanic tribes. Again, that's super
and
annoying.
A basketball team from Boston.
Yes, just like how Viking is being used for all Scandinavian or Nordic people, because Iceland also had Vikings, so did Ireland, but no one wants to talk about Irish Vikings.
So did Byzantium.
Yeah, and British Vikings did exist as well, which is also weird to say. Anyway, that's Viking stuff, and if you want to know about that, you could ask me off of Lorebeards. I would love to talk about that. You could actually ask me in the Discord, which we do have a Discord, and we are plugging that Discord right now because I'm going to write that in.
Yes, and if you have enjoyed this deep dive into the grim darkness of the far future, please do us a favor, hit that like button and the subscribe button so that you can help spread our heresy to more unsuspecting minds through the algorithm. We appreciate you.
Nope, it didn't work.
I'll get it.
Yeah,
You got it. It's an exclamation point.
What?
It's an exclamation point. There you go.
It is?
I've got it. Yep.
I always thought it was slash. Oh,
It's
that's
an
probably why it
exclamation.
never worked for me.
All right, so it may not work for me either, but at least I tried. Oh, there it goes. Boom.
Also,
bot to respond.
Ross, all the shields I made.
That's a lot of shields. That's a lot of bosses.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to briefly talk about Prospero Burns and the idea that there was a demon there. The book Prospero Burns tells us that chaos demons were present, covertly manipulating attendees, magnifying tensions, just trying to make the worst possible outcome occur. And one of the critical scenes in this book describes the Magnus's own equerry, Aemon, Magistus Aemon, who is also his adoptive father. I don't want to get into it. Aemon's a character we can talk about in the whole episode. But Aemon uses his powers to psychically incapacitate one of the attendees during the council proceedings. An act that, when later revealed, made Magnus look precisely as reckless and untrustworthy as everyone was saying he was. And Tzeentch, of course, has a very special interest in the Thousand Sons and Magnus specifically. It's heavily implied that Magnus made the deal to save his legion with Tzeentch, or with a cosmic being that would eventually become Tzeentch. In any case, this revelation makes the Council of Nikaea part of Tzeentch's great game. I again will state that I really don't like this part of the novel. I think it undermines a whole lot of the interesting points that the council was making about the Emperor being flawed, Magnus being flawed, and their relationship and all that other stuff. I think it undermines all that shit. So I don't really like it. But according to Prospero Burns, there was a demon there manipulating events. And that's all. That's as far as I'm going to go with that.
The other connection to that would be Arenditsky Boden's Talon of Horus from Iskandar Kion's perspective, where he talks about the demons on Prospero before it burned.
Okay, that's different. That's Prospero. That's not Nikaea.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were definitely demons. There were definitely demons on Prospero.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. With what you said there, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, but the demons within the meeting itself makes...
I don't like that. It makes no sense. It's silly. All right. Ricky Chapman coming in with a steel chair. He says, "We were there at Nikaea in a heresy campaign. One of the players was a Terran-born Thousand Sons and spoke at the council. He was part of the group that was fine with no sorcery but wanted psychers. He was part of the Lorebeards compromise." That's interesting, Ricky Chapman. I would love to play that out in a role-playing game. That would be, especially if there's a possibility to change what happened. I would love to like try and fix that, because that would be amazing. All right, so let's talk about the legacy of Nikaea. We talked about briefly the fact that, most the legions just straight up refused to follow the edict. And it exposed, it was very clear during the heresy that the edict had created a fatal flaw, because without librarians, they didn't have any real anti-demon measure within the legions. They didn't have an anti-demon force within the legions.
Yep.
So, bolters and plasma cannons will kick the shit out of enemy space marines, but demons, not so much. Whereas a librarian's psychic strike could, eliminate, at least remove them from the battlefield. Let's put it that way.
Now, I do want to state one thing. Demons in 40k versus demons in the heresy operate a bit differently. Demons in 40k operate much on the idea that if you think you can beat them, you can beat them. But Runestorm demons were kind of different, where bolt weapons were just passing through them, or plasma cannons were just hitting around them, and the demon would just keep running at you. It took holy weapons, those who believed in the Imperial faith, and psychers to deal with the demons.
You could think of it as Runestorm demons having a stronger and vulnerable save on the tabletop.
Exactly.
You could think of it that way. So Dorn, who was one of the strongest, like, next to Russ, he was also like, fuck psychers. Dorn at the Siege of Terra is like, nope, the Librarius comes out. Dorn, who is physically on the same world as the Emperor, who gave this order, Dorn is like, no, that's stupid. We're not doing that.
Well, so one of the big important things about Dorn in that scene is that Dorn, prior to this, gets a visit from Nathaniel Garrow, which we really have to do an episode on Nathaniel Garrow because he's actually like super important for a lot of people breaking the Council of Nikaea, because he goes to the planet when the Ultramarines are being attacked, and he recruits Tylos Rubio, and he has a conversation with Tylos about using his psychic powers, and Tylos is like, no, I'm not going to betray my Primarch. I'm not going to do this. And he winds up using his powers, and then they leave. And then it's only after, well, it's either after or before that, we're not entirely sure because both those books take place at the same time, where Gilliman's just like, yeah, his demons suck. Hey, Psyker, shoot him with lightning. See if that works.
Librarius is reinstated. Yeah, Gilliman did it during the Shadow Crusade, and Dorn did it during the Siege of Terra.
Now,
and just so you know, this is a thing that they did ignore when it needed to be ignored.
Now, we don't know if Gilliman was influenced by Nathaniel Garrow, but Dorn definitely was. Dorn was talking. Well, Nathaniel Garrow snuck aboard the Phalanx on an Arvis lighter, which is my favorite thing in the history of forever. The Arvis lighter snuck aboard the Phalanx, which is hilarious. Plot demanded it. Nathaniel Garrow went into the chambers where the librarians were being held. I can't remember the name of the librarian that he tried to recruit at this point. And Dorn was standing there like, oh, hell no. And he's like, hey, your brothers betrayed us, and I need your psychers. I'm on the orders of Malkador. And Dorn is just like, no, they didn't. That's not true. I hate you. And he's just like, bro, why would I lie? I'm like, what? And Dorn is just like, I could kill you. And Garrow's just like, bet. Let's see who has thicker plot armor. They don't draw blades, obviously. It's just a very tense scene. Eventually, Garrow leaves. But that set in motion that there was this slight, okay, like, hey, you could use your librarians, but don't go too crazy. And Dorn was just like, my brothers would never betray me. Now I'm going to go back to building up the Imperial Palace in case our brothers betray us.
The long-term effects of the Edict of Nikaea are really big. First of all, that Librarius Compromise, the idea that strict education and sanctioned use of psyker abilities are okay, but sorcery is not, that is the de facto policy of the Imperium for the next 10,000 years. On top of that, the decision to prohibit rather than prepare or better understand psychic stuff, that became endemic. Like suppressing knowledge of the warp became endemic. It created this deep fear and ignorance of these things into all the Imperial institutions. Psychic powers became shrouded in mystery and suspicion rather than being treated as some sort of science to be mastered, which is, again, that was what Magnus wanted. The Inquisition, they weaponized this. They created doctrines that justified burning entire worlds for potential psychic contamination rather than any sort of confirmed crime, if you will. The Ecclesiarchy transformed this into part of their religious dogma. The Grey Knights, go ahead.
Did you know, according to the Arbite's law book,
the Lex Imperialis,
the attempt to witness psychic powers is against Imperial law?
Yeah. You don't even want to be there. The Grey Knights, well, the Lex Imperialis is applied differently across the galaxy, so it's not.
Oh yeah, I just think that's hilarious.
Not necessarily true on all worlds at all times. Anyway, the Grey Knights, they were the secret exception to this rule. They are a chapter of librarians, and were established by a member of the Thousand Sons, Janus, and by Malkador. So that is the direct legacy of the Thousand Sons, is the Grey Knights. And then there's the Black Ships, the League of Black Ships. This was a form of collecting psychers and this was formalized after the Edict of Nikaea, to treat psykers as resources to be harvested rather than people. That all comes from that. Then, of course, the chaplains remain in all of the loyal chapters, and the word bearers. They still have chaplains. The black ships are the Emperor's DoorDash. Oh, Mornington Crescent. That's hilarious.
That's really good.
That's great. I hadn't thought of it that way. So the heresy proved that the warp was real. Okay, the Horus Heresy. This is when demons just appeared en masse. Okay, and it collapsed the imperial truth.
Yep.
This is in the vacuum left behind is where the Ministorum rose to power and the Ecclesiarchy rose to power.
It also didn't help that people who believed in the imperial faith witnessed priests banishing demons with the word of the emperor. Just saying that if I saw that in real life, I'd probably be like, maybe this faith is real.
I mean, so here's my final thoughts. We're in our last 10 minutes. So my final thoughts on the Council of Nikaea. It is one of the richest pieces of lore in the whole setting. It operates on so many levels at the same time. On the surface, it's this political and philosophical debate about the nature of power and knowledge, and there's no clear answer, right? I mean, both sides have legitimate evidence, both sides have genuine conviction, both sides make some really good points. But beneath the surface, it's a tragedy of communication failure. It's a tragedy where the Emperor, who knew the truth, but could not or would not share it. You got Magnus, his son, who reaches for knowledge, reaches too far in that pursuit. And this creates, it ultimately creates a betrayal that hardens something that could have been a reasonable compromise into an absolute ban that is then ignored, which is it's so tragic because there's no point to it at the end. At its deepest level, the Council of Nikaea is a meditation on the nature of fear and control in an authoritarian state. The decision to suppress knowledge rather than to educate, to prohibit rather than to prepare, to crush a potential tool of greatness, if you will, rather than to learn how to wield it responsibly. We're seeing that in the real world right now with AI. We are in our own Council of Nikaea.
Yeah, and people get mad at me when I tell them that if a channel shows me an AI thumbnail, I just block the channel.
The Imperium of the 41st millennium is paranoid. It is stagnant. It is burning psykers to death when it's not shipping them out on the black ships to feed them to the Emperor. But it simultaneously depends on these people to survive. It's in many ways the direct inheritor of the philosophy that was crystallized here at Nikaea. That if this thing was engineered by Tzeentch from the very beginning, that's ironic as fuck. To be clear, it's really ironic. But I find it very timely, and I found there's a lot of lessons we can take from this to our real world right now. That's my. Go ahead, Alexis.
Oh no, that's you're right on the money with that. I think the Council of Nikaea is one of the biggest events of the Horus Heresy that leads to Magnus wanting to turn on the Emperor. I think the real breaking point was when he desperately tried to reach out to his father and then failed, and then realized like, oh, everything I did was wrong to him, but not to me. I think there were a lot of sneaky things in the Council of Nikaea that actually lasted longer and had more of an impact than the Council of Nikaea, like the chaplains being slipped in which the chaplains would then go on to foster the faith of most space or a good chunk of Space Marine chapters, which is super important. I do think that psychic powers need to have more of a backlash in the writing. It's very weird that Powers of the Warp don't appear as often as I think they should. It is cool that we got to see one in the Warhammer Plus Tides episode, which was really cool with the Custodian and the Sister of Silence. That was absolutely badass. The demon thing was really, really, really dumb. Like, That was insanely dumb.
It's one of the very few things from the Horus Heresy that I really wish didn't happen.
Yeah.
There's very
I
few
think
things in the Horus Heresy I'm like, that's stupid, but this is the one. I'm like, I don't like it.
now, do I think it's as dumb as Slanesh Demon showing up in the War in Heaven? We had to mention the War in Heaven, of course. I think this might actually take the cake as being dumber because the War in Heaven thing we could justify. This one we can't. Yeah, I feel bad for Magnus. I really think that if he just got more one-on-one time with the Emperor, he could have actually become like a really, really good like commander of Psychers. He could have been Malkador's Grey Knights if he didn't get corrupted. But then again, maybe it was too late. Maybe he was already fully corrupted by then. Who knows?
So is the commandment still in effect in theory, according to Leader? Definitely not in practice. In theory, yes. There's like you can look at the Marines' Malevolence as a chapter that's like we don't really want to use Psychers. It is one of those things I don't think very many people know about it anymore in the 41st millennium. I doubt it's a subject of common knowledge.
Yeah,
I think it's fallen into myth and legend at that point. In theory, yes. In practice, no, would be my answer.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that one too.
So I'm going to put up a banner here shortly, if I can make one. Let's see here. Nope, that's something else. Need banners. Where are the banners? I'll look that up. Anyway,
I can't do it from here. I was going to look to make sure that everybody from this goes to Vera's stream.
channel. Twitch.tv/Vera Samilla.
Unfortunately, I could not because I'm not logged into the Lorebeards Twitch. I'm logged into my own. I can't send everybody over, but there we go. Thank you.
I did it for you.
Yeah.
So let's just really quickly, I'm going to run down the Primarchs and their positions at the on the council, if you guys are interested in that. For the last 5 minutes of the show, Magnus, of course, strongly pro. Layman Russ, strongly against. Mortarion, vehemently against. The Khan, pro, with some moderation. Sanguinius, pro. Fulgrim, pro. Lorgar, pro, with obvious ulterior motives. Dorn, against. Granted, his motivation is very pragmatic. He's like, it's just bad. It's bad because Psychers are he had pragmatic reasons. I'll just leave it at that. Korax, against. Horus, neutral. The Lion, neutral. Kurz, pro. Perturabo, against. Angron, against. Pharasmanus, against. Vulcan was pro. And Gilliman was also pro.
Well, so Gilliman sees weapons and he's like, I could use this.
Well, he thinks that all tools should be available. All right, so we got this. What's the right position to take? The position Sanguinius took. I mean, it's hard to go wrong if you follow Sanguinius's example.
I'm going to say something super controversial. Sanguinius is glazed like crazy in the heresy for doing almost nothing.
He did things, and I will die on the hill that Sanguinius is crucial to the Imperium's survival.
I will agree with that. But man, is he glazed.
Listen, everybody in the heresy loved Sanguinius. He was the most beloved Primarch. I'm not kidding about this. Yeah, we will probably touch back to the Council of Nikaea when we talk about Magnus and when we talk about the Burning of Prospero, which I really want to talk about the Burning of Prospero. That's fucking epic as shit, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
So much awesome shit happens at the Burning of Prospero.
We also get Sisters of Silence. I get to talk about Sisters of Silence.
And Psi Titans, Alexis. We get to see the Nemesis Psi Titans, and the one and only time they were deployed.
Yep.
Outside of the Siege Terror.
Yeah. I was about to say the Siege Terror. They were
outside of Terra. The time they were.
You've read that book, right?
The Siege Terror? Not yet. I'm getting to it.
There is
the end of the death.
So weird. Yeah.
The end of the death. I'm worried. I'm worried that the end of the death is going to be like Password Burns, where it's Abnett doing weird shit, and I'm just not going to be into it. But we'll see. We'll see.
But in Legion Mortis, in the Mortis book, it's almost like they completely forgot about the Psi Titans until the last paragraph. They're just like, oh, the Psi Titans cleaned them up. Done. I was like, the hell?
So I want to say thank you to everybody for showing up to our first episode of our first lore episode, our first Saturday episode of season 2 of Lorebeards. We're excited to bring you lots more great 40k lore. Please check out our Discord. Please leave a like or a comment on the video if you want to get our attention or tell us what you think about it. We're interested in improving the show and making it better as we go forward, so we'd like to hear from you.
And remember, in the grim darkness of the far future,
there is only lore. Thank you so much, everybody.
Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.